Chapter 91. Hot Breath. Dolly had long anticipated this day. Today, he asked Lily only to verify and find himself another way out. Lily looked at the mental strength potion in Dolly's hand, her expression troubled. A bottle cost 20 gold coins on the market. If she helped process it, she could save 10 gold coins, which was already quite good. At a rate of 4 bottles of potion per month, she would reach the critical point of advanced apprentice peak in at most the second half of the year. Biting her lip, she decided to risk it for advancement. Only a wizard who has advanced can be called a wizard. Without advancing, one is just an apprentice for life. This is a qualitative change. So many wizard apprentices in various families spend their entire lives preparing for advancement. She was already leading them by who knows how many times. Thinking of this, she took the potion from Dolly's hand and said slowly and seriously, "Okay, I'll help you process it." Dolly's lips curved into a smile. Seeing Dolly's smile, Lily felt that this little boy was not simple. He easily got her to work for him. She knew that in the Lake family, she was also a significant figure. This is the advantage of technical workers. Unfortunately, I don't have potionology. Even if I did, I might not be able to refine it. Lily knew her weaknesses and could also leverage her strengths. The two left the house one after the other and soon disappeared into the night. As usual, they spent the night in the rental house. Dolly calculated his current rate of advancement. When the first batch of merchants came in from outside, he could return to the city and officially launch his plan to kill Dice. In the darkness, a figure floated down from the house next to Dolly's. After confirming that Dolly was in the house, the person quietly slipped away and soon arrived in the North District. Bike sat behind his desk in the office, staring silently at a piece of paper on the table, his brow furrowed. Just then, he raised his head and someone quietly entered. "Reporting, sir, the person you asked to monitor has returned." Bike nodded and said, "Was there anything unusual about him?" "Nothing unusual. He comes back at this time every month for the past few months, goes to the pharmacy to sell herbs, and then returns books and borrows new ones. Nothing unusual." Bike rested his chin in his hand and said faintly, "Then continue to monitor him until he leaves the city." The Ability Association would not let go of any suspected wizard. Although this person named Lin Rui had never shown any wizarding abilities, his suspected connection to Dolly was enough for the Ability Association to monitor him carefully. Every wizard is a powerful weapon, even a beginner wizard. The Empire strictly controls potionology because wizards who can refine potions are too terrifying. They can easily cause mass casualties, so precautions must be taken. Recently being robbed had made Bike unhappy for a long time, but he didn't show it. However, everyone could see that he had lost all his good possessions and had fallen into a frenzy of accumulating wealth. Even the major families had been subtly critical recently. However, Bike held great power and was a high-level wizard apprentice, close to becoming a wizard, so he was not afraid of them at all. Most importantly, his teacher didn't care about his petty actions, so even Tina and the others were not a concern to Bike. Tina's third uncle died inexplicably, and the case had not been solved yet. Even the teacher was quite troubled, because although the poison white cicada did not have a wide circulation, it was not unknown. Who knew who wanted to deal with him? It was simply baffling. He didn't believe that a small blacksmith miner would have anything to do with the death of a noble. Materials science and magic inscription science still circulated somewhat, but potionology was tightly controlled. Any family or individual who attempted to possess potionology would die, except for nobles. The things recorded in potionology were too dangerous. He was still wondering where the potionology of the person who robbed him last time came from, but he couldn't investigate it, which was simply hateful. Dolly knew when he was being followed and when he wasn't. The tracker's skills were terrible, and he could easily spot their little tricks. Therefore, his transactions with Lily had not been discovered, and his transactions with Katia, a master who came and went like the wind and was already a wizard, would naturally not be discovered either. He didn't know the intricacies of potionology outside, but he clearly sensed this fact. However, potionology was indeed extremely dangerous. The various poisons and narcotics recorded on it posed too great a risk to ordinary creatures. If he were in power, he would definitely restrict the outflow of such items and crack down on them at all costs. In the morning, he met up with everyone at the entrance and walked out of the city. The city was still a world of ice and snow. The snow on the roads was completely gone, extending from the city gate to the major mines, swept very clean. The world was an expanse of white, with only the true colors of the mines. Throughout the winter, all the mines would not stop, even if a major accident occurred. This was the Empire's requirement for Diamond City, and it was also their main way of making money. What did the death of a person or two matter? Dolly walked along, looking around, and soon, his eyes were filled with only white. Back in town, Dolly continued his research on magic inscriptions. The burning hand had long been stalled due to mental strength. Even if he researched it thoroughly, the various nodes in the back could not continue. His mental strength was not enough, and his mental strength control was not strong enough. There were no other ways to train in the book. He felt that he had already reached his limit, so he could only study magic inscriptions. Magic inscriptions were much more difficult than potionology. Those things that looked like beautiful patterns had cost him a lot of thought. 2 full months had passed, and he had only made the initial warning magic circle, which could only detect vibrations and sounds, with a feedback range of no more than 20 meters. The front and back of the house were already covered with this kind of animal skin. At the same time, each animal skin was also painted with magic inscriptions to suppress energy fluctuations, preventing it from being found. Feedback magic inscriptions were much more difficult and more precise than detection magic inscriptions. It was a cylindrical magic inscription filled with various lines. The limit range of this lowest level feedback magic inscription was 20 meters, and Dolly had already done his best. Next was the level 2 feedback magic inscription. The limit distance of the level 2 feedback magic inscription was 100 meters, which was his goal. When he went to hunt down dice, if something happened along the way, Dolly hoped that he could grasp all the movements within a range of 100 meters to facilitate escape. This was the central idea of his current wizardry research. Everything was for the purpose of killing dice silently and without injury. As long as he could kill dice and eliminate the culprit, Dolly's mind would be at ease. From then on, he would be free to roam, and his mental strength would definitely increase again by a large margin. Wizards, what they most follow is their heart. If there is obsession in the heart, it will naturally fall into a demon, hindering development. Dice had become a thorn in his side. Therefore, he must die. Dolly worked hard for it. Just then, he suddenly moved, grabbed the animal skin he had half painted, placed it under his buttocks, and casually took out a piece of paper, writing and drawing on it. About 5 seconds later, there was a knock on the door. "Come in." The door opened, and Victor's figure entered from outside. Just after passing through a door, Dolly seemed to feel a small sun hidden in his body. He seemed to be facing some behemoth, suppressed by him in terms of momentum and blood. Chapter 92. To be precise, it suppressed all the sensations of his body, but not his spirit. His heart stirred, and he said with some shock, "Victor, have you advanced to a level 1 swordsman?" Victor was wearing a leather outfit, and his appearance didn't show any changes, but his face was full of joy. "Well, as soon as I advanced, I ran here to report to you. In the hundreds of years of history of our Three Rivers town, I am the 20th mayor to reach level 1. His mouth was almost splitting to the sky. He looked at Dor, his face no longer bearing the previous guard, but completely opening his heart. Although wizards are terrifying, Dor is a good kid, at least so far. He hasn't conducted terrible research or refined certain poisons, at least that's what he thinks. Dor sighed. This guy really accumulated a lot before erupting. He gave him 2 level 2 strength potions a few days ago, and this guy actually advanced directly. Although his talent isn't too good, it's much better than the average person. He also smiled and said, "Then congratulations to you. With battle chi, your strength has increased again. You are not afraid of some ordinary beasts. From today onwards, magical beasts are your target." Victor pulled over the stool next to him and sat opposite Dor. The smile on his face completely filled his face. "Only after reaching level 1 can I better protect the village. That's right, I feel like I'm full of powerful strength, but this strength is still too weak. I still need to improve slowly, very slowly. I came here to ask you, do you wizards have any shortcuts?" Dor's mouth twitched as he looked at Victor. "Mayor, you are too greedy, but people's greed is forgivable. After all, you have only just reached level 1, and you only have a little bit of battle chi, which is understandable. In the eyes of us wizards, or in the eyes of the entire world, there are actually many shortcuts, but the only shortcut in front of you is effort." Victor's smile stopped abruptly, and he asked eagerly, "Why? Since there are so many shortcuts, why is it that only effort applies to me?" Dor spread his hands, because you don't have money. With money, there are shortcuts. Without money, you can't do anything. Victor's mouth twitched. Then tell me, what are they? I'll go make money. I am also a level 1 strength now, and I can take people deeper into the mountains to find medicinal herbs and hunt more powerful beasts. That's also money. Dor grinned and said, how can one person's cultivation compare to the efforts of a force, thousands of people working together? How many medicinal herbs can you dig alone? Even if you lead the entire village into the mountains, how many medicinal herbs can you dig? How many magical beasts can you hunt? Don't be too ambitious. Dor drew out the last word very long. Victor thought for a while. It seemed to make sense, but he was still unwilling and said, then there must be a way to speed it up, like the strength potion you gave me, faster than now. This time it was Dor's turn to twitch his mouth. He snorted and said, do you know how much a bottle of the potion I gave you sells for outside? I know, 5 gold coins a bottle. Wizards' mental power potions are very rare, but strength and agility system potions can still be bought outside, not to mention the mayor of a town. Then do you know how much a bottle of level 3 energy potion for warriors costs? Victor blinked. 50 coins. You know that and you still ask? How much money can the entire Three Rivers town make in a year? Dor said unhappily. Level 3 potions are the potions after reaching level 1, but the materials are very difficult to find. Dor has not seen the main materials among the medicinal herbs collected by the residents of Three Rivers town. In addition to the fact that some medicinal herbs require a long time to age, most of the materials for level 3 medicinal herbs must be rich in energy molecules, that is, magic elements. Ordinary medicinal herbs simply do not have them, and even if you can find this kind of thing, I am afraid that there will be magical beasts guarding it around. Victor muttered in a low voice, is there really no way? Dor said unhappily, yes, there is. You find an expert to refine a piece of equipment that gathers magic elements for you, which can greatly reduce the difficulty of absorbing magic elements, probably speeding it up by 2 or 30%, but it's very expensive, dozens of gold coins, but don't look for me, I can't do it yet, the people from the Imperial Ability Association should be able to. Victor blinked, his spirit immediately lifted, and said, okay, I'll go find them right away. I've saved some money in the past few years. Also, copy a list of the medicinal herbs I can use, and I'll go back to the mountains to see if I can find them. Dor thought for a while, so he copied a list for Victor. Fearing that he would not recognize them, he also spent some time drawing sketches for him. This took him a noon and afternoon. By the time he finished, it was almost dark. He originally thought that Victor would be impatient and leave on his own, but he didn't expect this guy to stay for a day, watching him finish drawing. Miscalculated, still underestimated the desires of a person who has just reached level 1. Victor had already reached level 1. Dor looked at himself and sighed. Recently, after a night, he couldn't even meditate for a quarter of a copper coin. Copper coins were flying all over the sea of consciousness, and he had to maintain it. His entire mental power seemed to be divided into 163 parts, each rotating, which was very exhausting, but it also greatly trained his control of mental power. He felt that his spirit was much sharper than others, at least sharper than Lily, even sharper than Beachy, but it just increased too slowly. In terms of control, he was still quite satisfied. Mental power is not like battle chi. As long as the magic elements are highly concentrated, there is a way to speed it up. There is no shortcut. Perhaps a high-level meditation method is possible, but he has not yet reached the stage of using a high-level meditation method. When he really reaches that stage, he can shamelessly ask Lord Bale to bestow him with a top level 1, perhaps it will work. After seeing Victor off, the time of this day was wasted. Feeling the vibration of the ground going further and further away, Dor breathed a sigh of relief, lit 2 candles, placed them on the table to the left and right, took out the animal skin under his butt, and continued to draw. There are 2 feedback magic patterns, one is the transmitting end, placed on other magic patterns, used to send information, and the other is the receiving end, used to be placed on the carrier, used to receive information. The distance and amount of receiving information are related to both magic patterns. It is also possible to refine one receiving end and many transmitting ends, provided that the screening must be done well. All the strokes of the transmitting end must be consistent, exactly the same, without the slightest mistake. It took Dor a long time to find the several lines that control the frequency at the transmitting end, which made it easier. Otherwise, it would be too terrifying to draw the same picture every time. The lines on the magic pattern are actually very interesting. Many seemingly fancy lines only have one function. Many lines, although only changing one line, completely become another function, and the lines between magic patterns are interconnected and can be mixed and matched, which leaves a lot of room for operation. Chapter 93. Dory now studies second-level feedback runes, focusing on the transmitting and receiving ends, aiming for a range of at least 100 meters. Time passed slowly, and soon it was spring. When the weather gradually warmed up and the snow at the foot of the mountain had completely melted, one morning, a massive army, escorting hundreds of carriages, came from the mountain road in the distance, slowly heading towards Doman City. Seeing the convoy, everyone in the town came out to watch. Dory was naturally pulled out by Courtney to watch as well. The convoy was huge, escorted by an army, and all the carriages were heavy-duty. The horses pulling the carts were the very large draft horse type, and there were also large oxen similar to rhinoceroses. The carriages were large, loaded with grain, all kinds of vegetables, salt, various seasonings, cloth, and other items. This was a proper official army of the Northern Kingdom. They had three purposes here: first, to reopen the road and clear obstacles; second, to transport sufficient grain and vegetables to Doman City; and third, to haul away the ore accumulated over the winter. As for furs, medicinal materials, wood, and other items, they were handled by the family's private merchants, not just the officials making money, leaving no way for ordinary families to survive. It was already mid-February, and Dory had gone to the city once in between to see Lily, deliver medicine, and receive his own money. During this time, he had been frugal, and finally, he had not spent all the magic crystals. He still had a single magic crystal left. The magic crystal residue was all made into various potions, pigments, and other things for his own use, and he had secretly refined several very powerful poisons, such as white cicada. During this period, mental power potions were no longer very effective for him, so these days, he planned to drink 2 bottles of hallucinogenic potions before going to see if they had any effect. However, the side effects of hallucinogenic potions were too great, and he would rather waste money on mental power potions than experience hallucinogenic potions, but now there was no other way. While he was thinking, he sat on the roof, watching the huge official merchant team pass by. Those soldiers and carriages brought him a great shock. Those were all elite soldiers, with powerful vitality. Even the lowest level ones had the strength of intermediate warrior apprentices, and almost all squad leaders and above were entry-level experts. Walking on the road, their strong vitality was like a furnace. Such a team, almost no wild beasts or magical beasts dared to provoke, unless it was a super magical beast of level 3 or higher, but where would there be such a thing in this place? The team looked very long, but the speed of passage was very fast. After all, they were large pack animals, and the speed was guaranteed. The team quickly passed, disappearing around the bend. The river in the mountains had now completely thawed, making a gurgling sound as it flowed, and only some snow could be seen on the distant mountaintops. The hard winter was finally over. Victor had worried about the forest wolf incident all winter, but it never happened. However, Dory could also imagine why the forest wolves didn't come, because Victor had reached the entry level, and his threat had become great enough, so the forest wolves naturally didn't want to come. When the convoy passed, Dory thought for a while and said to Courtney next to him, "Little one, do me a favor. I am happy to help you, my brother." Courtney playfully used a noble etiquette, making Dory laugh. "Help me call your father over, I have something to say to him." Courtney nodded, turned around, went down the stairs, and ran to her home in the distance. Before long, Victor led Merkel from the distance, arriving at the entrance of Dory's yard. His eyes were heavy, and he seemed very reluctant. Dory jumped directly from the roof, standing firmly on the ground, without causing any vibration. He looked at Victor, not knowing why he still brought Merkel. Victor looked at Dory, and Dory looked at Victor, the two were speechless. "Are you leaving?" After a long time, Victor suddenly spoke. Merkel, who was standing behind Victor, was immediately surprised. "Dr. Lin Rui, are you leaving?" Although he had only been with Dory for 2 months, this guy's reputation in the village was comparable to the mayor, and he never caused trouble. Often, when Mayor Victor had something to do, he would ask him for advice. He was very powerful, but now he was actually leaving. He was a little confused. Dory nodded. Victor sighed and said, "I thought so too. It's the first time you've taken the initiative to look for me since you came to the village, so I guess this would happen. Don't worry, go ahead. If anyone asks about you, I will say that you are from our village. Dory didn't expect Victor to say that, so he shook his head and said, no, if someone asks you, just tell the truth. There's nothing to hide. I probably won't be back this time. Actually, after living here for so long, he was a little reluctant. This place was too suitable for secretly studying. The surrounding area was blocked by heavy snow, and no one came to check. It was simply a natural retreat. Unfortunately, all good things must come to an end. Dory returned to the house, beckoned to them, and explained some of the things he had left behind, potions, ordinary herbs, and a book he had written about the process of treating ordinary injuries. He left them all behind. As for who Victor gave them to, that was not his concern. As an outsider, he had done enough. Victor looked at the things Dory handed him, with mixed feelings. If I go to the city, where can I find you? I work at Mondo blacksmith shop. I am a contracted second-level blacksmith there. If you come, you can find me there. Victor's heart was shaken, and he felt a little unbelievable. He now finally understood how this guy got that dark skin when he first came. It was really baked by the fire. Merkel's eyes were also wide at this time. However, Dory simply ignored him. After explaining everything, he drove the two away. He planned to pack up, rest for the night, and then prepare to leave. To be honest, he really couldn't bear to leave this place, couldn't bear to leave the people here. After staying for a long time, he really developed feelings, even though he didn't communicate much with others. Alas! Victor walked on the road, thinking all the way. He stopped halfway. Behind him, Merkel almost bumped into Victor. He was about to complain to the mayor, but he saw him turn around and say in a serious tone, "Don't say anything about Lin Rui's matter, no matter who asks. Just say you came to me, understand?" Merkel was shocked. He had never seen Victor so serious. He nodded quickly. He opened his mouth to ask, but Victor said, "Ask what you should ask, don't ask what you shouldn't ask. It's good for you." After saying that, he turned around and left. Merkel curled his lips, mysterious, "What's going on?" Dory left early in the morning, taking bail, with a large box on his back. He said a few words to the guarding villagers, crossed the bridge, and entered the official road. On the wide official road, the traces of people passing by yesterday were still clearly visible, with various livestock feces, footprints, and clear wheel marks. Although the trees on the mountain had not yet sprouted, the warm atmosphere had already arrived, and the time for revenge had also come. Chapter 94. Arriving at the city gate, Doré showed the herbs and easily walked into the city. He first went to the pharmacy, put down a few bottles of beginner-level mental strength potions, exchanged them for gold coins, and walked all the way, leaving marks at fixed locations along the way, before returning to the rented room. After putting everything down, Doré immediately went out again and arrived at the entrance of Mondo's blacksmith shop. Arriving at the entrance, the fellow selling ironware didn't recognize him, treating him as a customer. Doré smiled and didn't speak, heading straight to the back, but was recognized by Anderson halfway. "Brother Lin Rui, how did you become so white? Did you put on makeup?" Having not seen the sun for a winter, coupled with exercising his qi and blood, his body naturally metabolized, removing melanin, and he was indeed very white now. Doré smiled and said, "I'm not a woman, why would I buy makeup? Is Uncle Hong here?" Anderson chuckled, scratching his head, "Uncle Hong and Brother Ha are both here. It's good you're back, you can start work tomorrow. There's been a lot going on lately." Doré naturally knew there was a lot going on. The spring busy season was about to begin, and the military headquarters was also starting to sweep the various beasts on both sides of the road, requiring a lot of weapons, bows, crossbows, swords, hammers, axes, etc. Doré was clear about all of this, having done this kind of work for a year. Arriving at the back, entering the living room, he immediately saw Uncle Hong and Harley sitting there, comfortably drinking tea. The two turned around at the same time, looking at Doré. "Yo, the vacation is over," Uncle Hong shouted in a loud voice, saying, "It's good you're back, ready to go to work." Doré nodded, "Uncle Hong, Brother Ha." Harley looked at Doré, his mind filled with thoughts. This guy was truly ruthless. But this little guy was good to his own people, and it was a good thing that he was willing to come back to work. There was a lot going on recently, and they were short of senior blacksmiths. How long will you stay this time? Harley asked a question. Dore looked at him, smiled, watch the news. Harley's heart skipped a beat. Sure enough, he was back for revenge. Alas. He sighed and said, okay, I'll go to your place later. He didn't dare say more, afraid that Uncle Hong would become suspicious. Dore nodded and said, okay, I have something to do today, I'll come to work tomorrow morning. Uncle Hong knew that the relationship between Dore and Harley was a bit strange, and didn't say much. He was naturally very welcome for Dore, a level 2 blacksmith, to be willing to work. In the spring, the city was most in need of blacksmiths, especially senior blacksmiths. Walking out of the blacksmith shop, Dore didn't walk far before he saw the mark on the roadside. It was left by Cartier. Lily hadn't replied yet, and he planned to visit Lily tonight. Just then, he felt someone was following him. He pretended to look around casually, and sure enough, he saw someone watching him from a distance behind, with clumsy tracking skills. He frowned. What was going on? Why was someone following him every time he came back? Who were these people? The ability association? If that was the case, he would have to change his face every time he came out. He lowered his head and thought for a while, then walked towards the city center. He soon arrived at a restaurant called Grande, went straight to the 3rd floor, where there was a private room. After asking the waiter a few questions, he quickly arrived at one of the private rooms. Opening the door, he saw Cartier sitting opposite him, happily eating fried chicken, taking big bites. When Cartier saw Dore coming in, he flustered, pointing to the opposite side with his elbow, his mouth full, mumbling indistinctly. Dore found it a bit funny, eat slowly, no one is going to snatch it from you. Sitting opposite Cartier, he poured himself water and picked up a chicken leg, putting it in his mouth and gnawing on it. The chicken legs at this restaurant were famous and very delicious. Dore was not polite with him, and soon, a chicken leg was gone. After a long while, Cartier finally said his first sentence normally, this time you're back, when are you planning to make a move? Dore licked his lips and said, let's scout out the information first, we'll talk about it later. This isn't a big shot, as long as we think of a way to get away, killing him is as easy as killing a chicken. Cartier glanced at Dore, are you so inflated now? I'm just stating a fact. It's too easy to want someone to die, especially if that person isn't even an entry-level expert. Cartier was speechless. These wizards never had a nice thing to say, clearly looking down on them warriors. But the destructive power of wizards was indeed much stronger than that of warrior professions, especially apothecaries. He should try not to offend them if possible. He nodded and said, I know you have many ways to make people die unknowingly, but after all, that person is from the police station. Killing him is not like killing ordinary people like Carmen. It will definitely cause a backlash from the Doman City police station. I never intended to stay in this place forever. Cartier was stunned, not expecting Dore to say that. He was leaving, so what should he do? He was silent. Dore looked at Cartier, not knowing what he was thinking, so he continued, this world is wonderful, I don't want to be wanted by the Empire, so as long as it's done reasonably perfectly, I'll leave this place then. Doman City is a bit small after all, and the top level of power is only so high. I need to see a wider world. Reading books every day, Dore had long yearned for the world described in the books, but with his great revenge unavenged, his heart could not be at peace, otherwise he would have left long ago. From Doman City to Chris County was only 50 kilometers of mountain roads, too close for a high-level wizard apprentice. Cartier sighed and said, hearing you say that, I should also leave this place. That person is already dead, I have avenged my revenge, and I have no regrets. At this time, he changed his mind and said, the ability association has already set its sights on your Dore identity, and your Lin Rui identity is also being suspected. We should meet less often recently. Dore nodded, I've also noticed it. Has anything major happened in the city recently? Cartier told him about the major events that had happened in the past few months. Actually, nothing major had happened. Several nobles without any weight had died. Several major families were furious and turned the entire city upside down, finding countless petty thieves. Even the assassins of the Assassins' Guild were cleaned up in batches, and social order was better than ever. The reason why nobles' lives are more valuable than commoners lies in the various privileges of nobles and the benefits that nobles bring to society, which ordinary commoners cannot compare. Even the worst noble brings more benefits to the city in a year than thousands or tens of thousands of commoners. A living noble is not a person, but a group. Each noble has their own interests, and the death of a noble represents an interruption of interests, which means that others need to compete for this part of the benefits, which is very detrimental to the management of Doman City in winter. The noble group almost controls 99% of the wealth of the entire society, which is why they look down on commoners. The death of several nobles was indeed a major event that shocked society. Doré knew how one of them died and who killed him, but that didn't mean he had to say it. Talking with Cartier was pleasant. Doré ate his fill, stayed for a while, and then left the restaurant. Chapter 95. In the evening, he transformed into Adu and went to Lily's small house. Before long, she returned. "Are you planning to return to the city?" Lily asked, merely glancing at his clothes. Dory nodded and said, "Yes, I'll be in the city for a while. I have something to do. Once it's done, I'll leave Doman City and go outside." Lily was momentarily stunned, and her gaze towards Dory became slightly more complicated. If Dory left, who would provide her with level 2 mental strength potions? However, the level 2 mental strength potion didn't have much effect on her anymore. Next would be tedious cultivation. Just then, Dory took out a few small medicine bottles from his pocket. "This is a beginner-level hallucinogenic potion. If your cultivation stagnates, you can drink a bottle, but the prerequisite is that you have enough willpower to break free from the illusion. If you can't break free, it will deplete your strength, and the loss will outweigh the gain. It's up to you whether you drink it or not, but with your strength as an advanced apprentice wizard, drinking a beginner-level potion shouldn't be a big problem, and it will be of considerable help." Beginner-level hallucinogenic potions weren't expensive to make, so giving her a few bottles was no big deal. Lily looked at the medicine bottles in Dory's hand, and her mind suddenly cleared. No wonder this guy's improvement was so shockingly fast. It turned out he was using this kind of thing. He must have inherited the complete version of potionology. Carefully taking the hallucinogenic potion in her hand, Lily nodded. She sighed and said, "I once thought about leaving this place, but I'm not like you. I've never lived outside before." She looked up at the sky, brushed her hair beside her ear, and her eyes were a little confused. At this moment, she showed an unprecedentedly feminine side. It wasn't that Dory hadn't seen women, but looking at Lily's appearance, he felt that this girl was still very beautiful, with a slender figure. Although her chest was a little flat, the cold temperament of a wizard added to her charm. Even if she couldn't advance to become a wizard in the future, marrying a noble would be a good choice. 14-year-old Dory hadn't reached the age of budding love, and he wasn't particularly interested in Lily anyway. At this time, Lily glanced at Dory, and then said softly, "Will you come back in the future?" Dory looked at her and smiled faintly. "Do you think an eagle that has seen the earth will still look at the small hills it used to know?" Lily hadn't read many books, but she understood Dory's meaning. She nodded disappointedly and said, "Then, while you're still here, help me refine some more level 2 mental strength potions." Dory nodded and said, "I'll try my best." The two quickly completed the transaction and then left separately. Returning to the slums and redisguising himself as Lin Rui, Dory returned to his rented house and saw Bear lying idly in the yard, rolling around on the ground like a real dog. Dory was a little confused, but he didn't bother him. He went straight back to his room. Soon, he walked out of the house with a small package on his back and began to arrange things around the house. Bear stopped rolling at this time and quietly looked at Dory, his eyes flashing with different colors. "This guy is improving too fast. It is estimated that in less than half a year, his mental strength will be full. If he takes the hallucinogenic potion, he will probably reach the standard of advancing to a level 1 wizard within the scheduled time. It's just that breaking through to level 1 is not a simple matter. It depends on fate. Although the human race is physically weak, their learning ability is amazing. This is fully reflected in Dory. This guy first learned potionology, then went to learn magic tattoo studies and material science, and now he is already quite skilled and progressing rapidly. He planned to be a bystander, quietly watching how far this guy could go. Of course, he would still help when he should, but unless he experienced a life or death crisis, he basically didn't plan to take action, leaving the little guy enough room to grow. He didn't plan to over-participate in the other party's life, just quietly be a pet while recovering his own strength. Before long, Dory circled around from somewhere, jumped down from the roof, and then returned to his room. He had a gauntlet on his wrist, made of animal skin, but Bear knew that it was a device for receiving signals from the surrounding area. As long as someone came, Dory would know. This little guy's awareness of danger is truly outstanding. In the morning, Dory transformed into Lin Rui and went to work. The blacksmith shop was as lively as ever. Anderson took the initiative to come over and assist by the forge, and the two cooperated fairly well. The main thing was that Dory didn't like to talk much. As long as you did well, he would hardly ask you to do anything extra. This was a very worry-free master. In less than 3 days, his fair skin was roasted red and black again, full of a sense of strength. He worked during the day and scouted Dis at night. Dis was a senior police chief of Doman City's police station, in charge of 40 or 50 people. He was very famous throughout the police station. Usually, except when dealing with superiors, he would be slightly humble, but at all other times, he had an arrogant and confident look. He transformed into several people and inquired about this police chief from the side. Adding some intelligence he had obtained before, this guy's life had been terrifyingly regular for the past 6 months. Other than going to work, he went home. He wouldn't go anywhere in between. He used to go to bars and restaurants often, but now he doesn't go at all. It's completely point to point. Dory inquired about his home. As soon as he got close, he felt someone watching him. Someone is actually protecting him. Who is it? Before long, Dory quickly thought of a way. He found a few rooms with suitable locations nearby, noted the house numbers, and went directly to the housing management office, preparing to buy them. He now had as many as 100 gold coins at his disposal, enough to buy a small courtyard. The strange thing was that these seemingly unoccupied houses all had owners and were not unclaimed. This was now tricky. Someone was monitoring him in secret, and the house couldn't be too close. How could he kill this guy? However, Dory wasn't without a solution. Wasn't he a police chief? He would definitely have to deal with cases. As long as he created a case, he would have to come, but then it wouldn't just be one person. Dory didn't want to kill innocent people indiscriminately. This plan wouldn't work either. He thought about it, sighed, and thought it looked like he would have to fight a long-term battle. More than half a year had passed, and this guy was still so cautious. It was simply overly cautious. What Dory didn't know was that since Dis learned that he had inadvertently offended a wizard, he was more than just afraid, he was terrified. After scouting for a few days and confirming that this guy wasn't going anywhere, he could only take action on the way he got off work. The police station got off work very late. Although there were people everywhere in the city, it also gave Dory a lot of room to operate. For example, out of 7 days a week, Monday night was very quiet. As soon as Dis left the police station, he would take a carriage back. He could tamper with the carriage. The Aberrant Ability Society. Baichi quietly listened to his subordinates' reports. Chapter 96. You said that blacksmith named Lin Rui came back from outside? And is working at the smithy again. The subordinate reported, yes, he returned to the city the day after the Christopher County transport team arrived, and he's still living in the same place as before. Baichi stroked his chin, feeling a strong sense of doubt about this person. From the information currently available, he's from Three Rivers Town and spent the entire winter there. He entered the city with them, left the city with them, and when he occasionally entered the city alone, he only bought books, paper, pens, and medicinal herbs. He doesn't seem suspicious at all. He also inquired at the pharmacy, and it was just ordinary medicinal herbs, nothing important. Could he not be that Dole? Dole is a wizard, but this Lin Rui is currently a blacksmith, and even a level 2 blacksmith. What wizard could endure this kind of hardship? He thought for a moment and said, then stop monitoring him. There's no point. Continue as usual with Dis. If that person wants to seek revenge, Dis is the best breakthrough point. Baichi only wanted to find Dole, but he had no task or interest in someone who wasn't Dole. The man nodded and said, reporting, Sir, regarding Dis, we have some new intelligence. Recently, someone has been near Dis's place. He carefully surveyed every room and even recorded the door numbers. Could it be someone looking to buy a house? Or a real estate agent? That's unclear. We didn't dare to follow him rashly. Baichi nodded and said, pay attention next time, and try to figure out the situation. Also, is there any information from the teacher's side? The man shook his head. No, the master has been discussing knowledge with that person. You may leave. After a long silence, Baichi sighed. A wizard after entering the level is a completely different concept from one who hasn't. Entering the transcendent stage greatly increases lifespan, and their vision isn't limited to a single city, while those who haven't entered the transcendent realm have to worry about all sorts of things every day. He was wondering if he should take hallucinogenic potions to break through, but taking hallucinogenic potions is extremely dangerous. A slight mistake could lead to serious injury or death. There are countless lessons in the history of abilities, making him afraid to try it easily. Baichi believed that his talent was no weaker than others, but he couldn't confidently say that his willpower was strong enough. Hallucinogenic potions test willpower, and willpower, to some extent, represents certain characteristics of mental strength. Now he was in a dilemma. Dole naturally needed to make thorough preparations before taking action. For several days in a row, he came out every night to study Dis's route and find the best opportunity to strike. In the afternoon, he observed the road conditions, not wanting to cause any trouble. So far, he didn't want to oppose the authorities, nor did he want to be known by the authorities. So many powerful figures in history who went up against the authorities ended up living miserably and dying aggrieved. Dole didn't read so many books for nothing. He learned a lot of lessons, so he had to be foolproof. He had to kill Dis without anyone suspecting him. That was his ultimate goal. Dis wasn't the first enemy he had encountered, nor would he be the last. It wasn't worth jeopardizing his future for a small character. No matter how young and vigorous a person is, when it comes to life and death, even the youngest person becomes extremely mature. Otherwise, the bloody heads and ashes at the city gate would be the best example. Dis doesn't leave work at a fixed time, especially these days with the important figures from Christopher County visiting. The entire Doman city is busy, and the police department is naturally busier than others. Every night, he returns from the police station between 8:30 and 9:30, and the time is very irregular. It's just the beginning of spring, and the weather outside isn't warm at this time. There aren't many people on the streets at night, making it a good time to take action. Dole had been scouting for a full half-month and was finally ready. To this end, he used up all the magic crystals on his body and made a large number of warning formations, placing them in many places on both sides of the road. He even specifically measured Dis's step frequency, weight, and ground vibration in close proximity, striving to ensure foolproofness. March 3rd was the last few days of the Christopher County convoy in Doman City. Large carriages were lined up in several rows at the city gate, and all the ore accumulated over the winter was piled on the carriages. Only a few vehicles weren't full yet, and loading and unloading were proceeding in an orderly manner. This caravan was escorted by the Imperial Army, officially reported and sent, and very secure. These ores would eventually be sent to major cities and the capital, becoming the Empire's sophisticated weapons. And Doman City's main task was just that. There were a large number of soldiers guarding near the ore carts, with torches burning brightly all night, while there weren't many people in the urban area. Dole left work as usual and went back without any delay. These days, he hadn't noticed anyone following him, so he easily went back, changed his clothes, disguised himself as a duo, carried a small bag, and quietly came out from his neighbor's house. Today was a good day for him to take action. He decided to first squat at the police station. As the chief of police, Dis naturally couldn't stay in the police station every day. He needed to investigate various cases, but he would return to the police station every afternoon after work to report the day's work to the police inspector. Today was no exception. Dole needed to quickly scout the area, then determine when he left work, and then give him a big surprise on the road. He had been waiting for this day for too long. Back in the prison, he was beaten black and blue and almost died. He would never forget that most desperate and painful moment in his life. Now, he was thinking about killing all these people almost every moment. That kind of suffering between life and death gave him enough motivation to kill. Dis didn't take his fate seriously, so he naturally didn't need to take the other party's life too seriously. Killing him with one knife would be too easy for him. These days, because of the official merchants, the city inside and outside seemed a bit chaotic. Security patrols and guards were wandering around, seemingly safe, but creating a lot of alibis and loopholes for Dole. The time when one thinks they are safest is when they are most likely to relax. Waiting from dawn to dusk, Dole hid on the roof of the building opposite the police station, his eyes never leaving the vicinity of the police station. At night, it was dark, but Dole breathed a sigh of relief. During the day, climbing on other people's buildings and trying to disguise himself. He was still afraid of being discovered. It was easier at night. After 9 o'clock, he quickly saw Dis leading a group of people down from the carriage, heading straight for the building with laughter and chatter. The police station was brightly lit, forming a sharp contrast with the darkness opposite. Seeing this, Dole immediately came down from the roof, quietly slipped into the alley next to him, and then walked into the distance, soon arriving in the East District. According to the time calculation, he would leave the police station within half an hour, just enough time to go and set up. Chapter 97. The alleyway was wide and dark, one wouldn't notice someone was there without a careful look. Based on the past few days of observation, he usually got out of the carriage at the alley entrance and slowly walked in. Dis was also a high-level warrior apprentice with considerable strength. Once he reached this point, he would basically feel completely safe. Duri had been waiting for this moment. He quietly arrived at the alley entrance and silently walked along the path, activating the magic-infused hide in his hand. Soon, he sensed the various warning magic patterns buried at the entrance. These were originally meant for alerts, but he had modified them all for detection. In fact, warning and detection often went hand in hand. In the darkness, Duri waited for a long time, his expression consistently somber and calm, without the slightest hint of agitation. The magic patterns vibrated many times, but Duri didn't move. Those vibrations didn't belong to Dis, they were either from the patrol or someone else. He didn't reveal himself. Soon, the vibrations of a carriage approached. It stopped at the alley entrance, and then a familiar vibration appeared in Duri's senses. Duri's lips curled into a slight smile. He stepped out of the darkness, uncorked a bottle, and tossed it onto the road under the cover of night. The bottle was wrapped in a layer of fur, so it made no sound when it landed. Before long, Duri sensed the vibrations getting closer and closer. After what seemed like a long time, a thump sound rang in his ears. He emerged from the darkness, held his breath, and quickly reached the middle of the road. Sure enough, he saw a figure wearing a police uniform lying on the ground. Duri's heart leaped with joy. He immediately stepped forward, drew a crossbow, and when he was about 3 meters away, swiftly shot an arrow at the dark figure's neck. Dis's senses were sharp. Although he left the police station late, having been busy all day, and there were many patrols on the streets late at night, he wasn't afraid. However, the vigilance he had cultivated over the years hadn't relaxed. After getting out of the carriage, he headed straight home, his eyes scanning the surrounding darkness. Having advanced to a high-level warrior apprentice, his eyesight was sharp. Even in the darkness, he could still see things somewhat clearly. As he walked and scanned, he didn't notice anything unusual, except for something in the middle of the road that hadn't been there before. Judging by the fur, it looked like animal hide. He was somewhat puzzled but didn't suspect anything. Perhaps a bird had died. He hurried forward, wanting to get home quickly. People arranged by the Ability Association surrounded his house. Once he got home, he could relax. Just then, he suddenly felt a bit dizzy. He didn't think much of it at first, assuming he was just tired from a day's work. But as he walked, the dizziness became more and more pronounced. Even before reaching home, he felt like falling asleep. His expression immediately changed. He bit his lip, clearing his head slightly. But the next moment, the pain disappeared, and his mind remained muddled. He knew he had been ambushed. There was an ambush on the road. He was so drowsy that he was barely conscious. However, the instinctive struggle honed over the years allowed him to regain some clarity. He immediately closed his mouth and tongue, pretended to be unconscious, and simply fell to the ground. Who was plotting against him? Who was it? That nobleman? Or that merchant? Or a robber? Or was it him? Thinking of this, he became frightened. However, his increasingly muddled mind told him that this situation was almost identical to Cayman's. Just then, he heard a sound in his ear. A strong sense of danger surged into his heart. He struggled, trying to roll his body to the side. A ding sound rang in his ear. Something shot into the ground, and instead of penetrating, it slid along the ground towards his neck. Pfft! The crossbow bolt grazed the ground, brushed against his skin, and pierced his neck. He suddenly woke up, realizing that someone really wanted to kill him. That was the sound of a crossbow bolt just now. However, he was still very drowsy. Despite being injured, he didn't know what he had been poisoned with, but it left him without any strength. He rolled over and vaguely saw a figure in the darkness. The figure also saw him. Their eyes met. Dari was somewhat surprised. This guy hadn't fallen? He could still struggle? A high-level warrior apprentice was indeed formidable. He was disguised as a completely unfamiliar person. The man wouldn't recognize him at all. With his neck pierced, even if it only hit the edge and didn't hit any vital organs or nerves, it was enough to give him trouble. He saw the other man's movements, still slow and numb. Clearly, he was poisoned and had no strength to resist. Dari didn't hesitate. He quickly stepped forward and stabbed his neck with a sword, worsening the wound, then stabbed again, right in the throat. At this moment, in the silent darkness, their eyes met from beginning to end, one filled with struggle, the other with indifference. Deeza's neck was bleeding heavily. Blood flowed down his trachea and into his lungs. He finally believed that the other party had come with the intention of killing him directly, and he finally recognized the eyes in the darkness. It was Dari, the young man he had thrown into prison and handed over to Otto and his son to be beaten. He had returned for revenge. Thinking of Cayman's death and knowing that he was about to die, Deeza's eyes gradually glazed over. At this time, Dari had no time to care about his enemy's emotions. He quickly searched Deeza's entire body for anything valuable, then retrieved everything he had placed around the area. In less than 2 minutes, he quickly disappeared into the darkness. Returning to his neighbor's house and climbing back over the wall, the tension on Dari's face finally eased slightly. He had finally killed him. Relaxed, at this moment, Dari felt an unprecedented sense of relief, but he also faced an unprecedented crisis. He didn't completely relax but quickly packed his things, called for bail, and quickly headed to the next predetermined location. The place he was going wasn't the slums or anywhere else, it was Lily's second hidden home. It was usually empty, and he could hide there where no one could find him. As long as he left the city early tomorrow morning, he wouldn't care what chaos the city fell into, it had nothing to do with him. With Deez dead, that damned Bichi would definitely suspect him and come to his house. By then, everything would be exposed. Therefore, he couldn't let Bichi find him. That's what Dari thought, and that's what he did. In the empty and silent darkness, no one knew. The mortality rate of police officers had always been high, so the police department's various detective allowances and benefits were also very high. Deez had long predicted that he would be killed by a wizard named Dari, but after so long, they still hadn't found the person. Perhaps everyone thought Deez was joking. But when Deez was really lying in the alley, all the captains and detectives were silent because they knew what had happened. They shouldn't have provoked a wizard. The guy was minding his own business, but they had to take black money and beat him half to death. Now, it was good, he was dead too. His wife would follow someone else, and his children would also be beaten. It was really his own fault. Anyone who could reach the position of captain naturally knew how many forces and interests were involved. He died quietly, and many people were secretly gloomy. The news of Deez's death quickly spread to everyone connected to him, various families, forces, and underground gangs. Chapter 98. P.S. I didn't sleep well last night and just woke up. Sorry for being late. At 11 p.m., the alleyway was full of detectives. Standing next to Deez's corpse was none other than Police Inspector Moreno, along with 2 deputy police inspectors. The 2 deputy police inspectors had already finished examining Deez's corpse. His death was exactly the same as Carmen's. It was the work of a wizard apprentice, who first used sleeping gas, and then stabbed him in the neck with a dagger or sword at close range. Unlike Carmen, who died inexplicably, Deez struggled a bit. After all, he was a high-level warrior apprentice. Moreno listened to the report, his somewhat tired face showing rage. Protect the scene, and immediately go and invite Lord Beach. Also, completely seal off the area. We must catch this lawless wizard. Everyone who heard this was immediately invigorated and shouted in unison, yes. All personnel below the rank of police chief were dispatched in a very short period of time. Soon, only Moreno and the 2 deputy police inspectors remained at the scene. They were all first-level warriors with great strength. The 3 of them were enough to guard the place. When everyone had left, Moreno's momentum suddenly plummeted. Looking at the corpse on the ground, he suddenly felt disgusted. Offending a wizard is really like not being in enough of a hurry to die, and this person is a wizard who knows potion making. Even entry-level professionals don't dare to offend them easily. He looked at the 2 and said, "Do you 2 have any thoughts?" In the dark night, one of the 2 shrugged, "No opinion." Just provide compensation. That person killed several people in a row, without harming the innocent. Obviously, he just wanted to target them and didn't want to be known. Let's just make a show of it. Exactly. Do you want to bury a lot of people with him if you try to catch a potion-making wizard in the city? Moreno nodded. He turned his gaze to the darkness and said with a lingering tone, Gentlemen, these are all lessons. Potion-making is really terrible. In the future, we still have to cooperate well with the Ability Association to prohibit the circulation of such things. The two of them felt the same way at the same time. Dole naturally didn't know that the police station was preparing to make a big deal into a small one, and a small one into nothing. Anyway, various detectives die every year. He was currently hiding in his room, vigilantly sensing everything around him. Then the night passed, and other than the patrol team wandering around outside, nothing else happened. Dole was a little puzzled. In the early morning, Dole acted according to plan, went out, and blocked Hage's path. Harley only slept for half the night, and was called to Link's mansion in the middle of the night. Although only a police chief had died, he was still called over. When he knew who had died, he was greatly shocked. Dole, this kid, still hadn't forgotten to take revenge, and he acted so quickly? He was still as calm as ever, as fierce as ever, killing with one blow, and then fleeing without a trace. This guy has only been back for half a month. In the early morning, after leaving home, Hage hadn't walked 2 steps when he saw a strange young man walking towards him from the opposite side. He just glanced at him and didn't pay any more attention. Just as the two passed each other, Hage suddenly heard the man say 2 quick sentences, Hage, it's me. See you in half an hour at the entrance of Old K's blacksmith shop. Hage was stunned and stood on the spot. He didn't look back at that person, his heart filled with shock. It was actually this guy. He didn't do anything, and then continued walking forward. He first went to Doman blacksmith shop, took a look, and then returned to Old K's blacksmith shop. Exactly half an hour had passed, and he saw the young man from just now, standing at the entrance of the blacksmith shop, looking at him with a smile. Hage looked at Dole's unfamiliar face and sighed. This guy is a master of disguise. He waved to Dole and said, Come in with me. The two quickly walked inside, entered a room, and then Hage closed the door. Hage sighed and said, Dole, are you leaving? Dole nodded. He took out a key from his pocket, placed it on the table, and then took out another 20 gold coins from his pocket and placed them on the table. Hage was stunned. What does this mean? Bribing me? Dole rolled his eyes at him and said, It's not for you, it's for Uncle Varik. You can give him a dochi cultivation technique later. Hage was immediately shocked. This was 20 gold coins, and some people couldn't earn that much money in their entire lives. Dole took out 2 bottles of blood red potion and 2 bottles of blue potion from his pocket, and said in a low voice, These are 2nd level strength potions and 2nd level agility potions, for you. Thank you, Hage, for taking care of me for so long. This time, I'm really leaving. Hage looked at the potion in Dole's hand, his eyes shining. 1 bottle of this potion costs 5 gold coins, which is very expensive. He can only buy half a bottle with a month's salary, so how could he be willing to buy it? Dole took them out all at once, really scattering money. He sighed. Dole was really loyal. After thinking about it, he said, I couldn't touch that guy, through various relationships. He still has someone behind him. I don't know who he's relying on. You killed him, so you should leave. It's good to leave this god-forsaken place. There is a wider world outside. After all, they are not people of the same world. It's better to leave early. Dole shook his head and said, Going to the outside world is my dream, but I won't leave for the time being. I live in San Hikao town outside. If Hage needs anything, you can come to me, but I might leave at any time. Hage chuckled, his eyes looking elsewhere, as if thinking of something, and then said, When I was young, I also went out to venture, went to Chris County, went to other cities, and even took a distant look at the royal capital, which is the real city. Even a corner of it is many times larger than Doman City. This is just a small place after all. You are a capable person, and you are also a capable person. You shouldn't focus your attention on the small Doman City. Your wizard group needs to move around more and see more, so that you have a career future. Dole naturally believed in Hage's words. He nodded, I came here today to say this. In about 3 months, I will be ready to leave here, and I will have someone notify you then. I used honorifics. Hage looked at Dole with a smile and said, just leave, there's no need to notify me. Just come back and see me sometime in your life. Dole's tone was solemn, definitely. Then I will thank you for Varik. I will give it to him quietly later. Dole's tone was heavy, then, Hage, take care. You take care too. Dole turned around, opened the door, and then walked out step by step, without looking back. He just glanced at Varik when he passed by the blacksmith shop, his eyes complicated. This guy is his real master in the true sense, although he is just a blacksmith master. Varik was resting at this time and had no chance to see him at all. Dole quickly disappeared into the city. The city was still under martial law. The death of a police chief was a big event, but leaving the city was not difficult. Dole took bail, carrying a large box, and easily left the city. He didn't look back, and kept walking towards the mountains. After turning a corner, the shadow of Doman City completely disappeared from view. Chapter 99. On the way, he had already disguised himself as Lin Rui and quickly arrived at the bridge of Sanhikao town. The guarding villagers were delighted. Lin Rui, you're back. Yet. How long are you staying? I don't know, it depends on the situation, probably some time. Haha, is it because you can't bear to leave county, the girl? Get lost. Haha. Dory laughed, crossed the bridge, and walked towards his small house. Although it had only been a little over half a month since he had returned, the entrance to the small house was already overgrown with weeds. After a winter, the silent mountains had begun to fill with a faint vitality from their deathly stillness. He had just reached the entrance when a voice came from behind him in the distance, "Hat, who is this that's returned?" Dory didn't turn his head. While opening the door, he laughed and said, "Lord Town Chief has very good ears." Victor laughed heartily, then his voice lowered, and he said, "I thought you would never come back, and I almost gave the house to someone else. How long are you staying this time?" Dory glanced back at him and said, "Until I reach rank." He was still thinking about the miniature magic crystal mine that Bale had mentioned. If he could get even a small piece of the magic crystal mine, he would be rich. Victor was stunned for a moment, then surprised, "You?" Dory didn't speak, but instead walked straight inside, beckoning to Victor, "Come in." Victor was a little shocked. This guy said he would stay until he reached rank, entering the extraordinary. This wasn't a joke. An extraordinary wizard was a little terrifying. The entire Doman city only had 2 level 1 wizards so far. This guy was actually going to formally enter the wizard realm before leaving. Was it that easy to become a wizard? He was a little baffled, but it was a good thing that he came back. At least the village had a wizard doctor, which greatly improved their chances of survival. In addition, now that it was spring, they had to start hunting and gathering herbs, which greatly increased casualties. The village doctor was simply not good enough. They entered the room. The room was still very clean, without too much dust, but it was a bit deserted. Dory wiped the stool and sat down in the innermost part. "Please sit." Victor was also polite, sitting opposite him, and said with some doubt, "Have you finished your business?" Dory nodded, "Yes, the enemies have been killed, so I will stay here all the time. I won't go to the city anymore, just occasionally go out." Victor breathed a sigh of relief and said, "That's good. I've been waiting for you to say that. We are preparing to go into the mountains to hunt these days. We've eaten almost all the food from winter." Dory nodded, "Don't forget to gather herbs for me." Victor smiled and said, "I knew you would say that. I've already distributed the herbal compendium you gave me. As long as we find them, we will bring them to you for free. Of course, in return, you need to provide some potions that can help us with our abilities." "That's natural, but I won't provide finished potions. I will provide some decoctions." "I understand. You are a wizard. If you really provide potions, I'm afraid someone will report you to the city." Dory smiled slightly and said, "Then we will continue to cooperate happily. In addition, don't let County deliver food anymore. From today onwards, I need to have some of my own little secrets, and don't let anyone else get close. The area around the house will become unsafe." Victor's expression changed slightly. "I understand, I will warn them." Dory nodded. The two chatted for a while, then Victor turned and left. In the city. After work, Varik was preparing to leave when Hage called out to him. Varik was a little puzzled, Why did Hage call him? Could it be that he had done something wrong? He turned his head and said, Hage, what's the matter? Hage looked at him and said, come with me to the back, it's good news. Varric was relieved, then put his clothes outside and honestly followed Hage in. The two came to the reception room. Hage took out a small cloth bag, handed it to Varric, and whispered in his ear, this is what Dory sent you. Hide it well, don't let others find out, and don't pass it on to others. I will announce to the public that you bought it. Varric was shocked. He touched it with his hand. It was a book. Combining what Hage said, he immediately became excited. Is this a book for cultivating battle chi? He quickly heard the key point in the words, Dory sent it. Where is he? He asked urgently in a low voice. Harley looked at him and sighed, he's gone, and he may never come back. Varric quickly thought of something, then this was done by him. Harley patted Varric on the shoulder and said, Dory is destined not to be on the same path as us. Take this battle chi breathing technique, but you can only practice it yourself. You can't pass it on to your children. This is the rule. Of course, once you advance to level 3, you can easily buy it for your children. Varric took the cloth bag, feeling heavy in his hand. Dory was a poor child. But he actually had the ability to kill Dis, so he should be a big shot now. Calming himself, Varric sighed, I will cultivate hard. He suddenly thought of the young man who came to the blacksmith shop with Hage this morning. He had looked at him a few more times. Could it be him? Dory tidied up the room, and then his mood completely relaxed. In this small country room, he truly found peace in his heart. The people who deserved to die were all dead. He had now completely let go of the grudges in Doman City and had to rethink his life. The magic crystals were now used up, but there were still many other materials left. If he wanted to do research or refine magic potions, he would have to go to the black market to buy magic crystals again. Now the meditation technique had also reached a bottleneck. Simply relying on drinking mental power potions was no longer making much progress, and at this time, he should think of other ways, take a different approach. He also knew the method of entering level 1, that was from a mortal, entering the realm of the extraordinary, releasing mental power, breaking through the shackles of the body, and using pure mental power to sense the heavens and the earth. Mental power breaking through the shackles of the flesh was an eternal problem. Sometimes it was by increasing the total amount of mental power, naturally breaking through, and sometimes it needed to rely on other special methods or experience or life and death struggles, because mental power would be limited to a certain special amount, unable to advance an inch, which all depended on individual talent. Dory didn't know what his talent was like. According to Bale, his talent was good, but now he was also stuck in a situation where his mental power was increasing extremely slowly. If he relied on the breakthrough of the total amount of mental power, he didn't know how long it would take. Now his mental power had broken through his previous guess of 170 copper coins, and he already had 178 copper coins. The amount of mental power felt sufficient, but how to break through the limitations of the flesh was a problem. Before, Bale said that he would almost break through in the middle of this year, but so far, he couldn't see any sign of it. The improvement of mental power brought about a comprehensive increase in senses, making him more sensitive to refining medicines, and making the manipulation of the hand of burning more fluent, although he couldn't fully change the improvement nodes into more powerful tetrahedrons. Through experimenting with the hand of burning, he already knew what energy was, and what exactly the wizard was manipulating, but so far, he could only come into contact with the energy in the magic crystal residue, and he didn't even know what the concept of the free energy in the air was. Chapter 100. P.S. Can't sleep, sigh. According to the understanding of wizards, there are infinite principles of heaven and earth in the world. These principles connect everything in the world and the origin of energy. The essence of a wizard is to understand these principles, control energy, and improve the essence of the spirit. The stronger the spiritual power, the more principles can be contacted, and eventually a very high level can be reached. The higher the realm, the longer the lifespan. Advanced wizards can even live for thousands of years. Some wizards can even achieve immortality through various means. These are the highest goals pursued by wizards. Dory is still young and doesn't understand that kind of urgent desire for life, but he also understands some things. Living in this world, who would want to die? He himself almost died, so he naturally knows what the concept of death is. If a person dies, then he has nothing. The word death is a great terror. Dory carefully thought about these questions, thought for a moment, and then stood up and arranged the refined warning array around the house. Soon, he returned to the room and continued to meditate. Without magic crystals, he can't do anything now, so Dory simply doesn't bother with it. He concentrates on meditation and waits for the next opening of the black market. Now that he doesn't let Connie deliver food, he has to cook for himself. Fortunately, there is still a grocery store in the town that sells various things. He went to purchase some cooking utensils and came back, ready to do it himself and be self-sufficient. As for food, it's even simpler. Just take a stroll in the nearby mountains, and you can find all kinds of edible things. When the people in the village saw Dory doing these things, they quickly started discussing it noisily. After Dory finished these things, he bought half a wolf leg from a farmer's house. That would be his dinner tonight. The improvement of spiritual power is slow. He is preparing to take another route, the path of a warrior. He has prepared his sword and bow, and plans to go into the mountains for a few days to practice his survival skills in the mountains. In fact, he has another option, which is to take hallucinogenic potions, but the process of taking the medicine is too painful. Dory doesn't want to try it so early, he'll take it slow and not rush. He rested for a night. At dawn, Dory put on a suit of clothes-fitting clothes, hung a sword around his waist, and carried a bow on his back. He darted from the ridge into the mountains, and of course, he didn't forget to bring Bale. Hunting without a dog is a strong denial of the dog's loyalty. The villagers will have opinions on Bale. Of course, once he enters the jungle, Bale's activities are no longer under Dory's jurisdiction. He dropped a sentence, "You play by yourself," and then quickly disappeared into the jungle. Dory snorted twice, not intending to pay attention to this big dog, and plunged into the jungle alone. There are many paths in the mountains, all of which were trampled out by the villagers. Dory went all the way up and encountered many things. No matter how many people there are in the mountains, there will be no shortage of various creatures. There are flying ones in the sky and running ones in the mountains. In a short while, he saw many rodents and rabbits, as well as many other creatures. These things are very fast, and in an instant, they into the forest. At least if you are a little slower, you will never see them again. If you want to hunt in the mountains, the difficulty is actually quite high. After Dory observed these things, he slowed down and sensed his surroundings through his enhanced senses. His footsteps became very light, and his movements were also quite slow. Soon, he became one with the surrounding nature. This was originally a technique in Neri's biography. He never wanted to use it before, but now it seems that if he wants to eat, he has to take it out and learn it again. However, Dory then learned about the cruelty of nature. His archery skills were too bad. Although he could avoid being discovered by other creatures, he couldn't hit the target with his arrows at all. After wasting half a day, he quickly came down from the mountain, empty-handed, only picking some herbs. Seeing Dory coming down from the mountain, the two villagers on watch immediately burst into laughter. "Dr. Lin Rui, where is your prey?" Dory raised his head, looked at the two, and twitched his lips. "I should practice my archery. I'll go with you tomorrow morning." He waved the bow in his hand and said familiarly, "Welcome, welcome." The two watched Dory leave, and then watched him stop in front of a hunter's house for a moment and take a rabbit back. However, they didn't mock him too much, it was just ordinary joking. If they annoyed Dory, no one would treat their injuries. Any martial skill requires a lot of practice to achieve. Dory hasn't been exercising his energy for half a year. Although his physical abilities have been improving, he hasn't made much progress in martial skills. He still knows the old set, and he hasn't learned any new things. With the assistance of his huge mental power, he can accurately control every muscle and every bone. It is impossible for his physical strength to decline, but his martial skills are really bad. Dory admitted this fact. In the evening, he flipped through Neri's biography again and read the parts about martial skills carefully again. This book is a treasure waiting for him to slowly discover. In the evening, Bale did not come back. Dory was alone at home. After eating dinner, he began to meditate. After running in the mountains for half a day today, he had some understanding of nature. The atmosphere of fighting wits with other creatures made his mental power highly concentrated, and his mental power was slightly enhanced. The sea of consciousness is still a darkness, only the copper coins exist realistically and virtually. 178 copper coins, in a certain order, layer by layer, slowly rotate around the center, so that there will be no collision. The collision of mental power is very uncomfortable, as if you are hitting yourself, your brain is buzzing. Avoid this situation as much as possible. This rotating method was also thought of based on the method of constructing spell nodes. Originally, he was thinking of making it into a polygon to build a super large framework, but you can let the copper coins rotate, but it is almost impossible to stop them. Each copper coin is equivalent to himself. Every copper coin is filled with different thoughts every second, and it is impossible to stop. So he gave up this idea. He doesn't know how others practice, and he doesn't know what advanced meditation methods are like. Baal didn't say anything, so he can only continue according to this method. 178 copper coins slowly emerge, and quickly grow a little. However, this little bit is all of one night. Soon, he felt that he could no longer continue, so he stopped meditating and instead consolidated the result. At the same time, he constructed the magic models of Burning Hands and Wizard's Hand in his sea of consciousness. There is also a light spell among the zero-level tricks. Dory doesn't want to practice it at all. Not only is it a waste of materials, but it is also useless. Although it may be brighter than a candle, can it be cheaper than a candle? Magic crystals are all money. Quickly constructing a spell model is a key factor for wizards to fight against the enemy. Being able to cast a wizardry spell instantly saves too much time to chant. After all, in a serious battle, time is life. Especially when facing assassins and archers, every second counts. Beach only entered the city on the third day, standing in the morgue next to the police station. The mortuary opened, revealing a body covered with a white cloth. The body didn't have much smell, obviously it had been processed almost. Chapter 101. The police officer lifted the white cloth, revealing Dis's pale face. Soon, the wound on his neck was immediately visible to Beach. He only glanced at it, and he understood somewhat in his heart. This guy should have ultimately died at the hands of that person named Duray. However, so far, no one knows of that person's existence, and the involved parties are all dead. That is a potion master with powerful patience and terrifying abilities. Although he hasn't killed anyone else, judging from the abilities he has shown so far, he is probably not easy to deal with. Potion masters, like necromancers, have always been synonymous with terror. But this guy should be fine, he almost only targets the involved parties and not anyone else. Otherwise, he wouldn't have planned for so long. He reached out and pointed, his mental power entering Dis's mind through his finger. After a moment, he retracted his hand, raised his eyes, and said, "Where is Inspector Moreno?" The police officer respectfully said, "He's upstairs." He said that once you arrive, please go over quickly after seeing the body. Beach nodded, then left the morgue and walked to the top floor. Moreno looked up and greeted Beach as he entered, with a serious expression. Then, in a low voice, he said, "Mr. Beach, what are your thoughts?" Beach snorted, sat down in front of Moreno, and his lips moved slightly. "I have no thoughts. My personal suggestion is that this matter should end here. Don't provoke that person. Also, our ability association will investigate in secret and expel that person." Moreno understood the meaning in his words, expulsion, not killing. He frowned and said, "Are you sure that person is a potion master?" Beach nodded and smiled faintly. "Besides the ability association's potion masters, there is now another potion master outside. As the inspector, aren't you afraid?" Moreno sighed, "Afraid? How could I not be afraid? If that person gets desperate and releases terrifying poison gas, killing dozens or hundreds of people, it would be fine if I, the inspector, am dismissed, but it would be bad if it implicated the adults." Beach said, "It's good that you know." Then he whispered, "Dis had contacted me before and told me about the matter. Their grudges currently end with Dis, so no one else will die. Inspector Moreno can rest assured." Hearing this, Moreno immediately widened his eyes. "Really?" Beach nodded, his voice heavy, "Really?" After saying this, he suddenly thought of someone, and his face darkened. A wild potion master, he seemed to know one. However, that person was indeed not easy to deal with, even he had been tricked. Only because that person had no intention of killing did he keep his life. Thinking of that matter, Beach was actually quite afraid, so he hadn't been to the black market recently. He felt lingering fear. Could it really be him? Among the wild wizards, only that person is a potion master who can concoct a level 2 mental power potion. He is Duray? How long has he been cultivating? How could he have almost died at the hands of that Odo family of fools? A series of questions surged into his mind. Before reaching the intermediate level, wizards have no combat power. They can't even sense that they are wizard apprentices. Without vast chi and blood, agile skills, and a strong body, wizard apprentices are trash. But a wizard apprentice who knows potion making is not so easy to provoke. The methods he encountered that day were an example. Unless, he didn't bring anything with him at the time? But how is that possible? He is now at least a high-level wizard apprentice who can use zero-level magic? Beach couldn't figure it out. This month, he planned to go to the market once to try to buy a level 2 mental power potion and sell some elementary mental power potions at the same time. This stuff is too difficult to refine. He tried so hard, but he could only refine elementary ones. He failed several times when trying to refine level 2 ones. This only shows one thing: he doesn't have the talent, but he is more proficient in materials science than anyone else. Among the 8 high-level wizard apprentices in Doman City, almost no one is good at potion making. Therefore, he was very envious of that wild potion-making expert. Level 2 mental power potion. But if he is a potion master, his mental power is probably close to its limit now. Thinking of this, he felt a chill in his heart. If he has a way to quickly enter the extraordinary realm, wouldn't Doman City have another big shot? This is not a good thing. If the other party wants to compete for the magic crystal mine, wouldn't Doman City be in chaos? The destructive power of an entry-level extraordinary wizard is no joke. However, although this news was a bit scary, he didn't intend to share it with the people of the Ability Association. Anyway, it would be the noble's interests that would be damaged in the future, which had nothing to do with him, Beach. He was thinking about leaving here when he had the chance and going to Chris County. The situation here was still too small. When DeRay decided to take a roundabout approach to break through to the extraordinary level, he was determined to train his physical body. After reaching the high level, the body refinement will soon end, and he can start cultivating something called the Yuan power breathing technique. This is the only way for all warriors. The breathing technique can regulate the body from top to bottom, open internal and external circulation, attract the energy between heaven and earth into the body, form a battle chi vortex, and allow people to truly possess battle chi. But this also requires a process. After the energy enters the body, it will not directly form battle chi, but rather allow the body to adapt to battle chi first. Otherwise, the violent energy will instantly enter the body and directly tear the human body apart. The breathing technique is divided into 2 parts. The first part is to strengthen the body again, and the second part is to condense the battle chi vortex. DeRay entered body refinement when he was at the blacksmith shop. Now he is a little short of finishing body refinement, and he can easily sense it with a sweep of his mental power. After making the decision, early the next morning, he carried his bow and came to the river beach to practice archery with everyone. Victor was very surprised by DeRay's arrival. He let the others continue practicing and came to DeRay's side, smiling. "What, are you going to do archer training too?" DeRay shook his head and said, "I have currently reached a bottleneck. Normal cultivation cannot improve, so I want to temper the warrior profession. I went hunting in the mountains a few days ago and found that I couldn't even shoot a rabbit. So, I came to practice." Victor couldn't help but laugh, laughing loudly. The people around him also laughed. DeRay was a little embarrassed. Victor said pretentiously, "Do you want me to guide you?" DeRay shrugged, "It's an honor to be guided by an extraordinary expert." Victor laughed and then shouted at the surroundings, come and see, Dr. Lin Rui is going to train with you. If you little bastards can't even compare to Dr. Lin Rui, you can all go eat dog shit." With this shout, people from further away looked over. DeRay was a little ashamed. This guy. For a time, the river beach became lively. Cao Ni was also in the crowd. She was still in the stage of practicing strength and was playing with stone blocks with the others. Seeing DeRay's arrival, she waved desperately, and then was spanked by the young elder who was training them, which made her grit her teeth in pain. DeRay waved to all directions, and then followed Victor to the archer's place. Someone quickly made room for him with a target and a bunch of arrows. DeRay glanced at their archery posture, which was too different from what was said in the book. Nalu Yi's biography has detailed illustrations, equipped with various continuous graphics, which are easy to understand at a glance, so DeRay is no stranger to archery. Chapter 102. Victor said, "Are you going to practice on your own, or do you want me to guide you?" Dory thought for a moment and said, I'll practice on my own. I have a related inheritance. Victor said leisurely, having an inheritance is one thing, being able to hit the target is another. Are you sure? Dory braced himself and said, I'm sure. If it doesn't work, I can always come back and find you. Victor smiled and said, then do as you please. Use the arrows as you like. After saying that, he went to the side to supervise the others. With Dory's level of effort, he didn't need Victor to manage him at all. Seeing Victor walk away, Dory took a deep breath and took down the bow from his back. His bow was different from the wooden bows used by the other villagers. It was a complete iron core bow. The bow body was made of spring steel, and it was a full 1.5 meters tall, very high. Although the bowstring was also made of some kind of animal sinew, it was high quality. The pulling force of ordinary wooden bows is about 20 to 30 kilograms, and they drive wooden arrows at extremely high speeds. His bow, on the other hand, has a pulling force of more than 100 kilograms, which is generally visible. The arrows shot out are faster and have stronger penetration. Seeing him take out this bow, the surrounding people became envious. Dory didn't care about their gazes, but practiced seriously on his own. He took an arrow from the quiver next to him, then carefully recalled the essence of archery, knocked the arrow, and shot. The target was only 30 meters away from them. Although Dory's arrow was crooked, it still hit the target. This made the surrounding people look at him in a new light. Was this still the doctor? Moreover, when Dory shot, the arrow tore through the atmosphere, making a strong sound of tearing through the air, which made the surrounding people extremely envious. Especially the middle-aged men who taught the young people archery, the corners of their mouths were almost drooling. Dory looked at the target, his mouth twitching. He hit it, but it was 100,000 miles away from the center. Damn it, it was the center point. However, he carefully recalled his movements just now, determined the direction of adjustment, and began to shoot the second arrow. After his mental strength became stronger, the most obvious thing was his perception and control, extreme control over his body. He could easily remember all his actions. The second arrow. Swish, it still hit the target, but it was still a bit away from the center, about a palm's width. The surrounding people immediately didn't dare to underestimate this doctor. Dory shot arrow after arrow, each time getting a little closer to the center of the target, and each time the arrow was shot a little faster. Soon, he could basically hit the center of the target, which stunned the surrounding archers. Dory's arm strength was very amazing. That was an iron core bow, with a weight of more than 100 kilograms. He shot all the arrows in the quiver in one breath, and still didn't blush or pant. This was a monster. In the distance, Victor was a little shocked. Dory's strength was still above his expectations. Wasn't this guy a wizard? How could he have so much strength? After Dory hit the center, he went over to pull out all the arrows from the target, put them back in the quiver, and retreated 20 steps. This distance was already the distance practiced by those slightly older archers, and the accurate range of most wooden bows was about 50 meters. Seeing Dory retreat, those people unconsciously shifted their gazes over to see how much strength this guy really had. Dory had already adapted to the arrow speed of the iron core bow. How long the arrow flew in the air, how much it fell, he knew it all by heart. Calculation was a required course for a wizard, so after he slightly adjusted his aim, he shot another arrow. This time, it still hit the target, only a little bit away from the bullseye. Seeing this, the surrounding people were immediately shocked. Dory himself was not satisfied. He had clearly calculated it very clearly. He calmed down and thought carefully, then felt the surrounding airflow. The wind also had a great effect on the arrow. Flying in the air for a few tenths of a second more, the wind force would act for a few tenths of a second, and deflection seemed normal. He readjusted his aim, felt the speed of the airflow, and shot another arrow. Ah, it's crooked again. Dory was not discouraged and continued to shoot. He used the traditional archery method, the standing small stance, which was suitable for close range, fast drawing, and high rate of fire. His iron core bow was actually more suitable for the long-range large stance flat shooting method. After all, his strength was great, and he could shoot faster and farther. But in the jungle, this method was not suitable. Although the large bow also had advantages, as long as the eyes were good enough and could find prey far enough away, the large bow could fully play its role. This point, refer to the elven archers of the elves to understand. But for ordinary people, small bows, a distance of 30 to 50 meters, quickly shooting arrows in the jungle is actually more suitable. Dory was using a divine weapon as a small sword, no wonder the surrounding people had opinions, but after practicing for a while, they had no opinions. This guy, supposedly a doctor, was stronger than them, which was simply embarrassing. Dory practiced for a whole morning, and the distance was also changed to 70 meters, which almost reached the maximum distance for adult archers in Sanhikau town. The achievements of one morning were more fierce than they had practiced for several years, and everyone had a new understanding of Dory's ferocity. This guy was not a doctor, but a professional master. Of course, archery was not the goal. The ultimate goal of Dory was to stimulate the body's qi and blood through archery. The qi and blood flowed slowly, flowing throughout the body, stimulating bones, muscles, entering the 5 internal organs, strengthening. Dory could perceive every little detail. Dr. Lin Rui, you are not just shooting arrows, you are creating art. The villager who taught archery was the captain of the village guard, Robert, known as Hawkeye. In just one morning, Dory had basically caught up with him, which had to make him exclaim in amazement. It was almost time to eat when he saw Dory stop, so he came up and said a few words. Hearing the voice, Dory turned around and smiled. I am already a high-level apprentice, and I have a strong bow, so it's nothing to be stronger than ordinary people. Hearing this, Robert was a little surprised. Dr. Lin Rui was actually a high-level strength, which was too surprising. Just then, Victor walked over from a distance, and before he even got close, he shouted, Dr. Lin Rui, come to my house for dinner today. Dory wasn't pretentious either, and shouted back, okay, I'll be right over. Saying goodbye to Robert, Dory put away his bow and took the quiver to the target, preparing to clean up. Several children immediately snatched it over, smiling and taking everything from his hands. Seeing this, Dory smiled. Actually, it felt pretty good in Sanhikau town. This was a mountain village town, without the concept of territory, without manners, without nobles, and it was very happy to live with everyone. Soon, the two of them came to Victor's house with Connie. At this time, the meal was already prepared, waiting for them to come to the table. After a while, after eating their fill, Victor said in a serious tone, we are going into the mountains to hunt in the next few days, are you going? Dory thought for a moment and said, sure, I'll go. I just want to see how you hunt. Victor nodded, then I'll add you in. Your bow is good, with a long range and fast speed. You should be able to hunt a lot of prey. Hearing this, Dory was a little speechless. Fixed targets and moving targets are different. Whether you can hit them is another matter. Victor raised his eyebrows and smiled, I'll have Robert teach you more then. You're so smart, you'll learn quickly. Chapter 103. Regarding archery, Dole had actually read many books and had some insights. The most important thing in shooting a moving target is calculation, arrow speed, the opponent's moving speed, the influence of obstacles along the way on the moving object, guessing the possible movement patterns, distance, and judging the possible landing position of the object based on the distance when shooting. This requires a lot of observation and experience. If it's just one person, they might be able to shoot a fixed target relying on stealth abilities, but if it's a large group traveling, the commotion caused can only be used to shoot moving targets. This tests a person's ability. Experienced old hunters can hit the target 4 or 5 times out of 10 based on past experience, while he can only rely on his vast calculation ability to shoot arrows. Having agreed to this matter, Dole went back to prepare. He was planning to advance to the extraordinary level in Three Rivers Town before leaving this place. These days, without magic crystals and insufficient materials, he doesn't plan to study any magic patterns. In a few days, he plans to go to the black market. These 2 days, he will follow everyone to gain some experience. The next day, early in the morning, a team of 30 people appeared at the entrance of the village. Some people were carrying swords, some were carrying bows and swords on their backs, and their bags were full. Obviously, they were prepared to stay in the mountains for a day or two before returning. Dole was naturally also in the team. The long bow on his back and the exquisite sword hanging on his waist became the biggest scenery in the team. This bow was produced by Mondo Blacksmith Shop. Naturally, Dole didn't make it himself. He doesn't have the ability to make spring steel yet. This requires very high skills, and even spring steel may not necessarily be used as a bow arm, there is a lot of attention to it. This is Uncle Hong's work. It was a bit cold in the mountains in the early morning, and everyone was wearing a lot of clothes. The less you wear, the stronger you are, for example, Victor, who is wearing an ordinary coat and a light chain mail. After gathering slightly at the entrance of the village and waiting for everyone to arrive, everyone quickly went up the mountain, very fast. The mountains behind the town are full of trampled roads, there is nothing at all, if there is, it is just rabbits, mice, snakes, pangolins, ordinary harmless creatures, and they are going to the mountains in the mountains. The team moved very fast, they were almost running, quickly came to the top of the mountain, and then paused slightly, then crossed the top of the mountain and entered the valley below. Here is Dole's unfamiliar area. The team was still walking, Victor came to him and said, "Where's your dog?" Dole shrugged, "Sleeping in." The corners of Victor's mouth twitched, he looked at the front and said, "Our goal is this valley behind the mountain. Generally speaking, there will be wild boars, wild cattle and wild goats, grey wolves, forest wolves, bears, etc. here. We can hunt some sheep and cattle, and avoid things like tigers and leopards. Although these things are not very threatening, killing too many will destroy the balance of the mountains." At this time, the sky was already bright, the sun had already come out, and the red light shone on a layer of mist on the mountain, reflecting a little bit of glow, which was very beautiful. Dole didn't expect Victor to say such a thing, especially the last sentence, which seemed to be full of infinite philosophy. He thought about it, "Okay, I won't shoot arrows casually." He had read many books and naturally understood why Victor would say such a thing. The forest is a complete ecological chain, with herbivores, and carnivores divided into many levels from low to high. Wolves, tigers, and leopards are the top creatures of predators. Creatures are divided into gregarious and solitary. Tigers and leopards rarely form groups, while wolf packs are very common. Wolf packs can be killed more, these creatures reproduce extremely quickly, they can't be killed no matter how much you kill, while things like tigers and leopards are very rare. Killing them, the wolves have no enemies and reproduce faster, affecting the ecological balance. After entering the valley, the team slowly slowed down, with the old hunters leading the way in front, and started the tracking mode. There is water flowing in the valley, and creatures need water, so naturally there are many traces left. Soon, the old hunters found traces of a group of wild deer. There are many deer in this group, as many as 30, and Victor is preparing to hunt about 5 to take back. The old hunters set off quickly and entered the mountains next to them. Dole followed closely behind, watching their actions. Following the old master is different, he is exhausted and can't find prey, people can find food by looking at it casually, this is the gap. When Dole saw this, he also observed the details around him. He opened his perception to the maximum, not letting go of any traces. Soon he himself found some small traces. The team moved forward while observing the surroundings. Soon, someone shot an arrow with a whoosh, and a small rabbit was nailed to the ground. After a while, a lost wild boar was found, and 2 or 3 people shot it to death together. The wild boar's skin is very thick, and it often needs to be killed with one blow, and it is a moving target. If someone is not confident, they need to work together. Dole followed on the flank, also observing the jungle. He didn't shoot an arrow, watching everyone's harvest, a smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. The team rarely spoke, even Victor only shouted occasionally, quietly, almost without making a sound. After walking for a while, the old hunter in front quietly stretched out his gesture, which was a sign that he had found the prey. A young man put away his bow and quietly climbed into the tree to look forward. Before long, he came down and waved his hand. Dole understood, he meant that the prey was in front. Victor waved his hand, and everyone began to quietly disperse in all directions, and Dole was no exception. His speed was faster than others, and he was more cautious than others, and soon he reached the direction of the flank. In front was a green flat land, the sun shone down from the bushes, and mottled shadows swayed on the ground. Dozens of wild deer were eating grass warily in the mountains while walking towards the mountains. The animals in the mountains are generally more alert. Dole found a good location, and after searching for a long time, he found a prey, which was a slightly older deer, whose body was as large as a calf, bearing the responsibility of observation, its ears motionless, observing the surroundings. This is the responsibility of a sentinel in a group. At this time, they were almost 100 meters away from this group of deer. Dole quickly drew an arrow and aimed quietly. He glanced left and right, other people were closer, and some people had already aimed. A sound appeared in Dole's ear, which was the sound of shooting arrows. At the same time, Dole also let go. Fixed target, no wind, ready to hit. Dole aimed at the deer's eyes, and almost instantly, he shot through the deer's head. With strong penetrating power, the arrow shot out from the back of his head, and he fell to the ground without saying a word, while in other places, there were also respective sounds. The deer herd suffered this great disaster, and quickly roared and fled into the mountains, extremely fast, faster than forest wolves, and disappeared in the blink of an eye. The crowd suddenly slammed, and one of them shouted loudly, "Dr. Lin Rui is amazing, shooting through the head with one arrow, this power, I'm envious." The speaker was Robert. He also hit one, but only shot the heart. He didn't dare to shoot the eyes from such a distance, the target was too small and there was too much uncertainty. Chapter 104. P.S. My biological clock has been a bit messed up lately. Everyone stepped forward to pick up their own spoils of war in the forest, and the crowd began to liven up. No more, no less, exactly 6 wild deer. The prey was piled together, and the old hunters looked at Doral's deer with some shame at their own archery skills. They had been hunting for years, but they were no match for Doral, who had only practiced for a day. A complete wild deer skin is worth a lot of money. Dr. Lin Rui is going to get rich, Victor chuckled. Everyone burst into laughter. Doral and Victor both chuckled inwardly. A deer skin is worth at most 7 or 8 silver coins. That's not much money. At this time, everyone began to break down the herd of wild deer, discarding the internal organs and other useless things. The skins and meat were to be taken back, while the others were on guard nearby. Doral was one of those responsible for guarding. Having seen blood here, the bloody smell in the air would quickly attract other carnivorous creatures, and this was the most dangerous time. He gently jumped onto a tree to observe the forest, while the others were responsible for other directions. At this moment, a gentle breeze blew from the mountains, the branches swayed, and there was a strange smell in the air, a musky smell. The smell was very faint, and Doral estimated that only he could smell it. He followed the direction of the smell, and in the dark, shadowy forest, there were many eyes, all green. These are wolves. Are these wolves also eyeing the deer? They can't catch up with the deer, so they're turning their attention to us? He immediately issued a warning. Several old hunters immediately came to Doral's side, holding bows and arrows, jumping onto the branches, and looking into the depths of the jungle, but they didn't see anything. Soon they realized that something was wrong. That forest was too quiet, too quiet. They knew that even if Dr. Lin Rui hadn't discovered wolves, there must be other creatures over there. Dr. Lin Rui is really cautious. This wasn't the first time Doral had seen wolves. He had turned over relevant books and read about wolves. Wolves are very cautious animals. They don't attack easily. Under the laws of the forest, they can't afford to get hurt. Injury means death. Therefore, a wolf that can escape unscathed will never take risks. The arrival of the wolves was quickly communicated to everyone. Those who were cutting meat quickly stopped what they were doing and moved towards the jungle. Victor also came to Doral's side at this time, his eyes looking towards the jungle. He didn't see anything, but after entering the level, his senses became more acute. Are you sure it's wolves? An old hunter on the side couldn't see anything and was a little puzzled. Doral nodded. He suddenly got up, nocked an arrow, drew his bow, and a stream of light quickly shot into the jungle. Roar! A low wolf howl suddenly came from all directions, mixed with the painful sound of a wolf. Doral nocked another arrow and suddenly shot it into the jungle. At this moment, another shrill wolf howl came, and then the wolf howls quickly faded away. The hunters were dumbfounded. Doral shrugged his shoulders and said, "My eyes are better than yours, and it's a fixed target." The crowd looked at the iron tire bow and had a new understanding of it. In Dr. Lin Rui's hands, the range of this iron tire bow was simply beyond their imagination. The accuracy of the shot was at least over 100 meters. You have to know that in the forest, you can't see far beyond 30 meters. Fixed target, I believe you. However, Doral did hit a fixed target. His eyesight was much better than others, and he could distinguish the wolves in the darkness, not blindly shoot. Thanks to his operation, the wolves in the darkness quickly dispersed, and soon there was no movement in the forest. The hunters breathed a sigh of relief and continued to dissect the deer. Although there were only 6 deer, each one was like a small calf, enough to eat for a long time. The town doesn't completely eat meat, and they also buy some rice, flour, and other things in the city, otherwise the nutrition would be unbalanced. Hunting the deer only took a few breaths, but dissecting it took a long time. In the afternoon, the hunters retreated to the valley and came to a mountain wall. Here was a mountain wall, and there was a huge cave in the mountain wall. They climbed up the mountain wall into the cave above, and stayed here tonight. Dorrel entered the stone cave and took a look. These guys really made the most of the environment. In this place, apart from monkeys who are good at using ropes, I'm afraid nothing can really come in at night. Birds are also basically unlikely, they won't look for this shallow cave. This is a very qualified campsite. In the afternoon, several hunters scouted in the distance, while most of them lived and cooked in the cave. Dorrel couldn't stay idle, and also joined the ranks of scouting. His eyesight had already been affirmed by everyone, and everyone was very relieved to have him. This valley is very long, and the water flows out from the nearby mountains, converges into the larger valley next to it, and then flows along the San Hikao town into the Doman River, flowing outside the mountains. Dorrel had never been outside, and was very unfamiliar with the world outside the mountains, but he had some impressions through various illustrations in the books. The outside world. Dorrel actually yearned for it a little. In the evening, Dorrel returned to the cave with them. Now they only needed to watch the cave entrance. As night fell, various insects began to chirp in the mountains, one after another. They hid in the cracks of the rocks, in the tree holes, and on the tree trunks. Various light spots flickered in the forest, which was very beautiful. At the same time, accompanying this romantic darkness were various terrifying cries. In the darkness, I don't know what sounds were hidden. The sounds passed through the air and entered the cave, making it difficult to fall asleep. Dorrel volunteered to be the first to guard. At this time, he felt hairy in his heart. Without Baal present, all kinds of ghosts and snakes came out around him. It was really terrifying. This level of terror was comparable to taking hallucinogenic drugs. Fortunately, nothing happened all night. In the early morning, they left the venison and other things in the cave, and then the large group continued to advance from the valley, looking for the next wave of food. Dorrel was much more relaxed today than yesterday. While watching them how to do it, he could also look at the mountains and forests by the river, to see if there were any herbs, and dig up some herbs. The mountains here are very primitive, without human destruction or animal devastation, so the probability of medicinal materials appearing is very high. Along the way, he found many medicinal materials. Some medicinal materials are available on the mountains outside, so there is no need to collect them at all, while some medicinal materials are only available in the mountains. Dorrel collected them as soon as possible. In addition to normal medicinal materials, he also collected some poisons and poisonous fruits, preparing to take them back for analysis. Orthodox wizards will have a separate laboratory, used to specialize in analysis. Pharmacists analyze various drugs, alchemists analyze various materials, and study the mixing ratio, while formation masters analyze the compatibility of various materials and formations, each different. In Nerihu's biography, wizards above level 5 will have their own magic towers. Wizards with magic towers are extremely terrifying, comparable to natural disasters, and it is truly safe to conduct experiments in the magic tower. Dorrel feels that he has some talent in magical medicine, but now he doesn't have his own laboratory, and there is no source of various materials, which is very miserable. He can only memorize according to the records in the book, and what he can really see is to use simple instruments to analyze it slightly, compare it with the knowledge in the book, and turn it into something he can use. Chapter 105. The people in town all knew that Dorrel was a doctor, so they weren't opposed to his digging for medicinal herbs. On the contrary, some people would even remind him if they saw any. The main group slowly moved along the river, disturbing many small animals and discovering many wild communities along the way. Soon, they found traces of a group of wild boars that had just left near the river. Without a word, Victor led the people to chase after them. Soon, they found the group of wild boars in the mountains. The wild boars in the wild varied in size. The largest wild boars were as big as cows, with huge bodies. When they walked in the mountains, the ground shook. Their black fur was like steel needles, and their skin didn't look like ordinary bows and arrows could pierce it. The smallest wild boars were about the same size as domestic wild boar piglets, and they were protected by the larger boars in the group. When Dorrel saw this group of wild boars, they were chasing a bear up a tree. Although a lone bear was powerful, it still had to avoid the wild boar pack. A group of wild boars howled and pounced, scaring the bear. They were extremely fast, one climbing the tree and the others quickly forming a circle below, constantly roaring at the tree. The two sides began to confront each other. At this time, Victor gestured, signaling the surrounding people to quickly surround them. The wild boar group was in chaos, which was perfect for action. At the same time, an old hunter came to Duray's side and handed him 3 arrows. Duray was a little puzzled, but after receiving them, he realized that these were 3 pure steel arrows, very heavy. They were just coated with a layer of colorful things, so he couldn't tell what they were. He glanced at Victor, who pointed at the big wild boar and touched his eyes, signaling him to strike first and aim for the eyes. This was a big guy. Duray understood, put one of the 3 arrows in the quiver, held one in his mouth, and knocked the last one on the bow, ready to shoot at any time. Wild boars have a very keen sense of smell, and their hearing is equally good. They didn't dare to get too close, approaching the wild boar group little by little, communicating with gestures as they walked. Soon, Duray understood that Victor wanted to take down the big wild boar. The wild boar as big as a cow should be the leader of this group. There were quite a few wild boars in this group, more than 50. Even brown bears avoided them, so they had obviously become a force to be reckoned with and couldn't be allowed to continue growing like this. If this big wild boar became any stronger, it would probably turn into a magical beast and become the overlord of the area. Then the village would no longer be safe. Everyone slowed down and approached slowly. Duray pulled to the side, standing in a slightly higher position. The other hunters surrounded him, each taking their position. Before long, everyone was in place. At this time, the wild boar group was still roaring at the brown bear in the forest. On the ground, several wild boars of considerable size were frantically ramming the tree trunk, making a huge noise. At the same time, the sounds of boars and bears became the main melody of this forest. They didn't notice the ambush of the surrounding hunters. Just then, the big wild boar stopped, raised its head, and looked at the towering tree, grunting. The tree was very, very big, as thick as several people could hug. The several strong wild boars rammed it for a long time, only scraping off some bark. The tree didn't move at all. Victor signaled Duray to attack, and he also took out his bow and arrow, quickly shooting an arrow at the big wild boar. The 2 arrows, almost simultaneously, shot towards the wild boar's eyes. Puff, puff! A shrill scream rang out from the main group. The surrounding wild boars exploded in an uproar, not knowing what had happened. At this time, the huge wild boar turned over and fell down, silently. Duray naturally knew what was going on. He shot one of its eyes, and the arrow went straight into its head. On the other side, another arrow was stuck in the other eyeball. At the moment Victor shot, he felt the energy fluctuations he had felt on bar before. That should be battle chi. Victor was a level 1 warrior who had entered the ranks. His strength was already great, and after attaching battle chi, the power of the arrow doubled, instantly piercing a hole in the wild boar's head, even more powerful than himself. The surrounding hunters saw this and shot the arrows in their hands one after another. In an instant, dozens of arrows shot into the forest together. Swish, swish, swish. After shooting one arrow, Duray took out the other steel arrow from his mouth while the wild boar group was in chaos and shot it at the wild boar group. He only saw a flash of light, and the arrow went into another large wild boar's heart. With a thud, the wild boar fell to the ground. Duray breathed a sigh of relief. The wild boar was moving, and he thought he wouldn't be able to hit it. At this time, the wild boar group was completely in chaos. The leader was dead, and several large wild boars were also injured. Except for a few large wild boars that howled and pounced towards the crowd, the other small wild boars fled into the forest. At this time, Duray heard the sound of swords being drawn, which meant the hunters were preparing to fight. He was on the flank and didn't need to worry about these, so he shot arrow after arrow at the wild boars scurrying around. This time, some hit, some didn't, all depending on momentary calculation and luck. After a while, everything was quiet. Even the brown bear in the tree quietly looked down, not daring to move. Duray quickly came back to check and found that some people in the crowd were injured. One person had a broken arm, one person had a broken leg, and several others had abrasions. Victor was nearby. Those wild boars were so powerful. He looked for Victor in the crowd and found that he was also a little embarrassed. He didn't know what had happened. Ah, it hurts, be gentle. Has Dr. Lin Rui arrived yet? Come and take a look at me, my leg is broken. Damn it, I was careless. Those big wild boars are too fierce. I will never fight them head on again. Something weighing hundreds of kilograms suddenly crashed into me. Even the town chief wouldn't be a match. Several injured people were carried and sat together, all moaning. At this time, Duray quickly came over, hurriedly took out medicine, and treated several people, while looking for trees to make fixed splints. Victor came over after a while, looking black-faced, and scolded, "Are wild boars something you can fight head-on? With that weight of hundreds of kilograms, don't you look at your own abilities? Now you're in trouble. You're so old, and you're still making such a low-level mistake. You won't be able to come for half a year." Those people lowered their heads, as quiet as cicadas in winter, not daring to say a word. Only then did Duray know what had happened when he heard this. He found it a little funny in his heart. These people tried to be brave, but they didn't succeed. However, this time there were wild deer and wild boars, which was a great harvest. Moreover, this was only spring. In autumn, there would be more wild animals here. They cut some wood, carried the wild boars and people back, not daring to stay in the forest for long, and quickly left. The largest wild boar required 6 people to carry it. This could be said to be a great harvest, enough to eat for a long time. They went back the way they came. With people injured, the speed slowed down. It took a whole noon and half an afternoon to return to the top of the mountain. They sent someone back to quickly call for people, and everyone breathed a sigh of relief and slowly went down the mountain. The mountain on the town side was actually very safe. They returned home triumphantly. This time, there were only injuries and no deaths. Everyone was very satisfied. When they returned, they had already passed the top of the mountain, and everyone was talking and laughing along the way. Soon, the people who stayed behind in the village quickly came to meet them and were a little surprised to see the prey they had hunted. Chapter 106. This time, it was a great harvest. Everyone was carrying prey on their backs, big and small, hanging all over their bodies. It could be said that it was a truly great harvest. After wandering in the mountains for 2 days, Dole could be considered familiar with hunting. Vigilance, vigilance, and more vigilance. This was the law of the jungle. Without vigilance, death could come at any time. In the dark mountains and forests, who knew what was lurking? Returning to his room, Dole tidied up, sorted the collected herbs, and dried them in the yard. By the time he finished, it was already late at night. Bear had already comfortably settled in the room at some point. Seeing him enter, a smile appeared on his dog face. "How was it? How did you feel about the mountains and forests?" Dole rubbed his hands together, his expression solemn. "More dangerous than I imagined. Even ordinary wild boars can harm entry-level experts. It's simply terrifying." Bear shook his head. "It's not that wild boars are powerful, but it's a racial advantage. You humans are inherently weak. Using your weight of only about 100 kilograms to charge at a wild boar weighing nearly 1,000 kilograms, even with Dochi, it won't work." Dole was immediately thoughtful. This guy seems to have been around all the time. He understood the meaning in Bear's words, nodded, and said, "I understand. When there is no racial advantage, you need to use your own advantages to exploit the disadvantages of others. Don't use the strengths of others to attack your own weaknesses, right?" Bear nodded. "The most powerful thing about the human race is its ability to use intelligence and tools. This is precisely what beasts lack. Why compete with creatures 10 times your weight in terms of physical strength? That's completely foolish behavior." Dole shrugged. "I know. I'm not the foolish one." Bear chuckled and said nothing more. "You need to hurry up and enter the extraordinary realm. Let's leave here quickly. This place is no longer suitable for your development." Bear naturally had his own plans. Now that he had come to this world, he couldn't stay in this small, broken place forever. He needed to go out and see the world and the beautiful women. Doiman City was really too remote. Dole nodded, feeling a little troubled. "My mental strength is currently stuck in a bottleneck. I can only focus on breathing techniques and martial arts training." Bear lowered his dog head, somewhat helplessly saying, "Take your time. I don't have any experience in this area. After all, I was born as a Tier 3 creature." Dole's mind buzzed. He tried hard not to look at this guy. He was being attacked. "I need to go to the black market this month to see if I can exchange for magic crystals. Without magic crystals, nothing can be done." Bear nodded, seemingly nonchalantly saying, I will follow you then. Dole breathed a sigh of relief. With this guy around, safety could be guaranteed. Thinking of this, he calmed down again. He unusually didn't cultivate that night, but went straight to sleep. Although he hadn't wasted much physical strength in the mountains these past 2 days, it had indeed been mentally exhausting. He felt that he should go into the mountains more often in the future. After all, if he could discover an unknown magic crystal mine in the future, he would have to claim it for himself as a reserve resource. If he wasn't adapted to mountain life, it wouldn't work. He couldn't rely on Boss Bear for everything. After resting overnight, Dole appeared on the riverbank on time in the morning to exercise his body and practice breathing techniques. Breathing techniques are the key for humans to enter the extraordinary world. Through breathing at a specific frequency, qi and blood are stimulated at the same time, reaching a very subtle state. In this situation, the human body will open, attracting a portion of energy into the human body, and strengthening the body in coordination with the breathing technique. If, by chance, a person can sense the energy entering the body and intercept it, leaving it in the body, then Do Qi is formed. Dole's mental strength couldn't extend beyond his body, and his improvement was quite slow. He only wanted to use this method to sense the ubiquitous energy between heaven and earth, and make a side breakthrough as a wizard. Maybe he could break through 2 bottlenecks in one go, one as a wizard and one as a warrior. He was still shooting arrows, coordinating with his breathing, shooting arrows one after another. He could feel his muscles expanding and his bones growing. This was the effect of the breathing technique. There were about 170 adults and children who could move around in the village. 30% were children, and about 20 had advanced strength. At this time, these 20 people were standing by the river like Dole, moving slowly, looking very comical. But these 20 people were the strongest people in Victor Village besides Dole. As long as one person could break through, the village's ability to protect itself would be greatly enhanced. Dole was shooting arrows aimlessly, feeling the constant changes in his body, and constantly sensing the energy between heaven and earth, but he gained nothing all morning. The energy between heaven and earth was completely different from the energy in the magic crystals. It was very subtle and very weak, far less intuitive than the energy in the magic crystals. He could touch and sense the energy in the magic crystals through his skin, but the energy in heaven and earth was like a spring breeze and rain, leaving no trace, which made people very distressed. Dole knew that he might need a very long process to break this shackle. Time slowly passed for 3 days, and the time for the black market arrived. Dole prepared his things, disguised himself as a duo, wearing a set of animal skins. Before dawn, he and Bear secretly slipped out of the small village. In the early morning, the villagers in the watchtower on the bridge were asleep and didn't notice Dole's departure at all. He quickly entered the official road and headed towards Duiman City. Just as the sky was getting light, he came to a location not far from the city gate, at the entrance of several valleys. After just one glance and a moment of thought, Dole chose a valley entrance and walked inside. As it was getting brighter, he had also penetrated deep into the valley. Turning left and right, he quickly came to a very wide valley. While walking, he casually and quietly dropped some things on the road. Dole quickly entered the valley. Comparing the surrounding situation, he quickly saw a natural cave in the mountains. Seeing the cave, he smiled slightly, put the animal skin hood on his clothes, put on a mask, and then headed towards the cave. Arriving at the cave entrance, a voice came from above. East, west, south, north. Dole's disguised voice blurted out, cause and effect cycle. Come up. With a light jump, he easily jumped 3 or 4 meters, came to the cave entrance, and slowly walked over. At the entrance, a middle-aged man nodded to him. With the increase in mental strength, Dole was already able to initially sense the differences in the surrounding world. He sensed that there were subtle other forces existing on the middle-aged man, and his heart trembled. This was the guardian of the black market, actually a Tier 1 wizard. Dole fumbled in his arms, took out a bottle of Tier 2 strength potion, and placed it in front of the guardian. The guardian glanced at it, nodded, and put away the Tier 2 strength potion, but his eyes narrowed even more, seemingly becoming interested in him. Dole had sold potions last time, and he still trusted the guardian's character, so he directly strode in. Behind him, Bear followed closely, also glancing at the guardian, his dog eyes revealing a calm and unwavering state. The cave was very dark. After walking not far, he smelled some odors, and some light appeared in front. Chapter 107. The cave was very large. There were many torches on the stone walls on both sides, and a dozen tents were set up in different corners, which surprised Duray somewhat. Are there so many wandering wizards now? He strolled down and soon came to the tent of the first wizard. He took a look. It sold all kinds of pure medicinal herbs, without any potions, and some raw ore. This person may be of lower strength, and the medicinal materials are also very low level, but they are all medicinal materials recorded in magic pharmacy for refining potions. Thoughtful. Duray noted the location of the tent, preparing to come out and buy it later. Before he could turn around, a voice came from a distance, "Little guy, I have what you want, come quickly." Duray turned around and looked back. It was a person in a tent in the distance. Looking closely, it was the other person who had traded with him last time, not Beecher. He was holding a cloth bag in his hand, which looked quite large. If there were no accidents, it should be filled with magic crystal residue. Duray nodded to him, indicating that he would come soon. The owners of the surrounding tents were a little strange when they saw that person beckoning to Duray, but several people around who had seen Duray last time had their eyes lit up at this moment. "Little guy, I also have what you want." At that moment, 3 or 4 tents stood up and showed off the small bags in their hands. Those who saw Duray for the first time were dumbfounded. What's going on with these guys? Does this young man have something good? Are they fighting over him? In the innermost tent, Beecher looked at Ado's face with a gloomy expression. This guy really came. Duray was also a little confused by the whole thing. What's the situation? Just then, a voice came from outside, "Free trade, no coercion." The voice was not loud, but it had a strange power that could shock people's minds and shake their spirits. Everyone was silenced after hearing this voice. They didn't dare to offend the guardian. In the dark cave, the situation was a bit strange at this time. Almost everyone who recognized Adu in this image was staring at him expectantly. Duray found it a bit funny. Is magic pharmacy so scarce? A few bottles of Tier 2 mental strength potions made these people so anxious. Really? He was now convinced that the Northern Kingdom's blockade of magic pharmacy was even more severe than he had imagined. Thinking of this, he walked and looked at the goods of the people around him, and soon came to the person who spoke to him. That person immediately became excited and said, "I want 3 bottles this time." He immediately took out the bag of magic crystal residue. Duray took the bag in his hand, weighed it, nodded, and then took out 3 bottles of mental strength potions. The eyes of the people around were on Duray. At this time, seeing the mental strength potion, they seemed to understand something. My god, Tier 2 mental strength potion, what is he exchanging for? Magic crystal residue, damn, this thing is also very difficult to get. Any wizard who enters the advanced level must have magic crystal residue or magic crystals for experiments. They don't even have enough for themselves, how could they take it out for trading, unless they sacrifice the opportunity to do experiments? But if they use magic crystals to exchange for the opportunity to improve their mental strength, they are also willing. Heartbreaking. Duray's mental strength hasn't improved for a long time, and he has accumulated a lot of mental strength potions. He exchanged them one by one, and actually exchanged a lot of magic crystal residue. These people really have their own channels to get things. This time he made a lot of money. Of course, these are just magic crystal residue, not magic crystals. The most profitable thing is still searching directly from Beecher. Watching bottles of mental strength potions being traded out, Beecher was also a little anxious, but the guardian was outside, so he could only wait patiently. Soon, Duray came to him. His appearance was disguised. Duray was about to trade with him when Bar snorted softly next to him. This kid is Beecher. Duray's excited expression suddenly disappeared, and he looked at Beecher with a trace of solemnity. Beecher was also stunned at this time. What's wrong with this guy? The expression he looked at himself with was wrong. Did he find himself? How is this possible? He made a comprehensive disguise, even deceiving the guardian outside? Duray looked at Beecher, the person who had been robbed by him last time, and was not frozen to death. The life of a wizard is really powerful. He thought for a while, then narrowed his eyes and said, Your Excellency has recovered well. You have accumulated so much wealth so quickly. Beecher is good at alchemy. At this time, there are many things in front of the tent, all kinds of alchemy products, which seem to have different effects. According to the truth, this guy should not lack mental strength potions in the ability association, why come to the black market to buy them? Beecher's heart sank, his face was a little ugly. This guy really recognized him. He snorted, and said, "Just a few hidden places, this time I am sincerely trading. I know who you are, we can meet privately later." Beecher looked at Duray, then his mouth slowly opened, but he didn't make a sound, but looking at the shape of his mouth, it was Duray's name. Duray's eyes shrank, revealing a little bit of killing intent, which then disappeared. Beecher felt the killing intent, but he didn't care at all. Duray may have a talent in magic pharmacy, but it is not so easy to kill him. It is estimated that it is just a threat. "Okay, then let's trade this time, I have 5 bottles left." Duray was silent for a moment, then said. Beecher was a little shocked. This guy, after trading with 7 or 8 people, still has 5 bottles, this output is a bit amazing. With so many potions, his own strength is probably already at the limit of advanced. Damn it, this guy has only been practicing for so long, and he has surpassed him. Damn it, potions are really good things. At this time, the people around were also a little shocked. This production, this guy's strength is probably unfathomable. Beecher still took out a small bag, and then signaled Duray to take a look. The number of these magic crystal residues was obviously not enough to buy 5 bottles. He opened the bag suspiciously and found 2 complete magic crystals inside, so he quietly put the bag away and put it in the baggage on his body. The transaction was completed. Duray's purpose was also reached. He then turned and left, Bar following closely beside him. The 2 came in quickly and went out quickly, and they only traded potions, without any delay. He soon came to the door, saluted the guardian, and was about to leave. The guardian suddenly opened his eyes were indifferent, as if he could pierce people's hearts, and said lightly, "Magic pharmacy is easy to understand, but it is difficult to refine. I hope you don't go astray." Duray was stabbed by the gaze, felt a great mental pressure, and suddenly felt a slight chill in his heart, and sweat flowed from his forehead. He immediately lowered his head and said, "Senior, this junior has no plans to develop towards black wizards." The guardian closed his eyes again and said, "I can see that, remember my words, otherwise the Ability Association will not let you go, and our Wizard Alliance will not let you go." Duray was stunned for a moment, blinked his eyes, and heard a new term, the Wizard Alliance. The guardian obviously didn't want to talk, and Duray didn't bother to care, and then turned and left, thinking in his heart, what is the Wizard Alliance? Is it an underground organization of the Northern Kingdom? Then what is their purpose of opening the black market? Discovering talents, attracting talents? Or, serving wild wizards? He plans to come next month to ask. This guy seems to be very easy to talk to, maybe he can ask something. Chapter 108. For Duray, the wizarding world presents a serious cognitive problem. Aside from a book from centuries ago, and well-known terms like the Mutant Association, Wild Wizards, and Dark Wizards, he knows nothing else. He doesn't even know the cultivation methods after entering the level. If he were a real wild wizard, his future would be bleak and dark. However, he has Baal. He doesn't need to consider these things. As long as Baal doesn't leave him, there will always be a way. Leaving the valley, Duray went all the way, collecting all the things he had set up. Soon, he disappeared into the valley. At 10 o'clock in the morning, he returned to the small village. Beecher knows my identity. He will definitely come to me, but I don't know in what way. Now he knows all 3 of my identities. This is not a good thing. Duray sat in the room, thinking carefully, and incidentally cooking for himself. He did it himself, ensuring he was well fed and clothed. Soon, several days passed. Duray felt that his mental power had reached its limit, almost overflowing, and almost impossible to improve. The quantity was also fixed at 180 copper coins, no more and no less. No matter what method he used, when he tried to condense a new copper coin, it would immediately dissipate. He knew that he was at his limit. At this time, the side benefits brought to him by the breathing method were almost gone. He still couldn't sense the energy in the air after it entered his body. For this reason, Duray was a little distressed. However, he soon decided to take hallucinogenic potions to seek a breakthrough. Anyway, that stuff couldn't kill people. Just as Duray was about to take the hallucinogenic potion, Victor asked Connie to come and find him. Duray didn't know why. He walked out of the room, but as soon as he came out of the house, he saw Victor standing in the distance on the river beach. There was a person next to him, and the 2 were talking happily. Seeing this person, Duray narrowed his eyes. It was Beecher, and he came with his true face. Victor didn't know Beecher's identity. With his level, Beecher couldn't be arrogant at all. He showed the air of a knowledgeable scholar. In front of a real professional, a wizard apprentice wouldn't be so flamboyant. The two seemed to be chatting very happily. Doré just thought for a while, then touched Connie's head and walked towards the river beach. He used Lin Rui's identity and soon came to the river beach. Mayor Victor, what's the matter with looking for me? Doré pretended not to know Beecher. Victor coughed when he saw Doré's arrival, and said, Lin Rui, this is Mr. Beecher from the city. He is from the city lord's mansion. He came to our town to investigate. I heard about you, so I brought you here. Beecher looked at Doré with a smile, as if he were an official. Doré nodded and said expressionlessly, a village doctor in the countryside is not worth mentioning. Does this lord have something to say? Beecher then chimed in, whether it is a village doctor or a city doctor, a good doctor is one who can save lives and heal the wounded. Your reputation in the town is good, so I wanted to meet you. Doré chuckled, chat. Beecher said, here. Victor was about to speak, but Doré smiled, let's go to my place. It just so happens that the mayor is here too, let's go together. There were people around, and Doré couldn't speak clearly with Beecher. Victor was curious at this time. Although these two seemed to be meeting for the first time, their tone didn't seem like it was the first time. What was going on? Could it be that this Lord Beecher has a problem, but his identity is fine? The people who came with him were all city guards, so there should be nothing wrong, right? Victor also nodded, Dr. Doré's place is very clean, we can go and sit for a while. I am ashamed to say that I have not reported to the city lord's mansion since I entered the level. He took the initiative to mention when he entered the level, and looked at Beecher. Beecher's expression became serious at this time, and said, our Doman city is a small county, and any extraordinary professional is a powerful combat force. If Mayor Beecher can go to the city, he will at least be treated as a supervisor. Entering the level means being extraordinary, surpassing the meaning of ordinary people, and the combat power is obviously increased. Whether this kind of person enters the army or the government system, they are combat forces that cannot be underestimated. Victor felt relieved. This guy is really a small official in the city, and he doesn't forget to be a lobbyist for those lords in the city at this time. The three walked and talked, and soon arrived at Doré's door. Beecher saw that this was just an ordinary small house, with some vegetables planted in the yard, and only 3 small wooden houses inside. He glanced at Doré without speaking. Doré's expression became serious at this time, please. Beecher looked at him with the same serious expression, and said, please. Victor, who was in the middle of the two, felt a different atmosphere and felt more and more that these two had a story. As soon as he entered the room, Doré was the last to enter, and closed the door smoothly, saying, Lord Beecher of the Mutant Association, how have you been recently? Victor walked in front of Doré. When he heard this, a surge of energy burst out from his body, and he looked directly at Beecher in front of him without any concealment. The powerful energy soared into the sky, even blowing things around the house. The power leaked out and was quickly blocked by several pieces of animal skin pasted around the house. Beecher was also taken aback. He didn't expect that Victor would do this. This guy was obviously in cahoots with Doré. He immediately jumped forward, then activated some defensive measures on his body, and then shouted, Mayor Victor, wait a minute, I am here with the will of peace. The scene immediately became tense. Doré looked at Victor's actions, and the corners of his mouth twitched slightly. He looked at Bale in the corner, but Bale was obviously impatient, probably thinking in his heart, 2 small bugs. Mayor Victor, wait a minute, he has no hostility. Victor still didn't relax, his spirits were high, his eyes were bright, and he was ready to kill this guy if he didn't agree. He knows your identity. Doré said softly at this time, it doesn't matter, the Empire's Mutant Association is not an enemy of wild wizards. Their enemy is dark wizards, and I am not a dark wizard. Victor was obviously not clear about the difference between dark wizards and wild wizards, and was a little dazed, is there any difference? Before Doré could speak, Beecher said in horror, there is a difference. Wild wizards are just ordinary wizards who have obtained a little inheritance. They are not threatening, while dark wizards like to use all kinds of dark wizardry, which is what you often call black magic to kill people. The biggest difference between wild wizards and dark wizards is their attitude towards living beings. Dark wizards are cruel and murderous, but wild wizards are not. Being approached by an entry-level warrior is simply a catastrophe for a wizard apprentice. Victor was stunned. It was the first time he had heard of this statement. He looked at Doré, and then at Beecher. Although there was something fishy between the two, it was indeed not a matter of life and death. He slowly restrained his aura, his eyes still fixed on Beecher, and said sullenly, "Doré is the benefactor of our village, you better not have any bad ideas." Beecher smiled bitterly. Faced with the close threat of an entry-level warrior, his legs were trembling with fear. "How dare I? I came this time just to buy some potions from Wizard Doré, with no other intentions." Although Beecher was terribly frightened, he also saw a problem, that is, Victor knew the fact that Doré was a pharmacist, and he never thought of reporting it. This guy seemed to have entered the extraordinary realm not long ago, and it should be thanks to Doré's potion. P.S. Learning to drive in driving school, the next chapter will be after 6 o'clock. Chapter 109. Baichi's mind was racing. Dolei listened to their conversation, feeling somewhat speechless. He slowly walked towards the table, saying as he walked, "Relax, everyone. Don't be nervous. Baichi is from the Ability Association, but if he were here to cause trouble, he wouldn't have come alone." Reaching the table, he sat down and looked at Baichi. "You guys have so many people in the Ability Association, and it's an official organization, you shouldn't be lacking in magic potions, right? Why does it seem like everyone is short on them?" Hearing this, Baichi turned around, looking somewhat embarrassed. Although official organizations have various inheritances and don't lack relevant knowledge, inheritance is just inheritance. Someone has to learn it. Almost everyone wants to specialize in the field of potion making, but few succeed. From what I see, the chances of success with talent are greater than 99%. In our entire Ability Association, only 2 people know potion making, and they are only intermediate wizard apprentices. Victor had already withdrawn his aura, only watching him warily. Dolei frowned. The Ability Association has controlled Doman City for so many years, and not a single person has made any achievements in potion making. Baichi smiled wryly. "Really, no one has. Only entry-level adults can accurately control their power. In the apprentice stage, there really aren't any." Dolei was silent for a moment, then he thought about his own situation, gaining a new understanding of precise control. Since he started learning potion making, the book stated that potion making requires a very high degree of mental control, so he focused on this aspect of training. Moreover, his own meditation technique came from controlling multiple copper coins, further strengthening his control. This was brought about by the meditation technique. Now it seems that ordinary wizard's control is probably less than 1/10 of his own. Thinking of this, he suddenly understood. He looked up and asked, "How many magical tricks do you know? How many spell models do you know?" Asked such a private question, Baichi didn't hesitate and said, "I only know the Burning Hand, and I can barely control it. If I use the spell model, I need 4 seconds to fully evolve it." Hearing this, Dolei understood many things. So, most advanced wizard apprentices are useless. 4 seconds? How many times would you die standing in front of an archer? He was speechless. Seeing Dolei's increasingly disdainful gaze, Baichi asked suspiciously, "How many seconds do you need?" Dolei looked up. 2 seconds. Baichi suddenly understood. "No wonder, your control is good, no wonder you can make magic potions." Dolei was actually thinking, "I can use the Burning Hand in less than a second, hee, you trash." He stopped focusing on this issue and said, "How many bottles do you want?" "I have 10 bottles on hand now, freshly made." Baichi was immediately shocked and overjoyed, but he said calmly, "All of them." He took out a small bag from his pocket. Dolei saw his small bag. The space inside seemed very small, unable to hold too many things, but to exchange for 10 bottles, it seemed that this guy was taking out finished magic crystals. "Rich man," he gave a thumbs up. Baichi smiled wryly, "Not as rich as you. This is all I could find recently, but with these 10 bottles of level 2 mental power potions, I'll basically reach the peak of advanced wizard apprentice. I just need to settle down a bit and I can prepare to break through to become a wizard." Dolei shook his head. Breaking through to become a wizard wasn't that easy. Baichi also knew that breaking through to become a wizard was difficult. Seeing Dolei shake his head, he knew that Dolei might have reached that realm long ago, but had been unable to advance. Breaking through was too difficult. However, as long as he first entered the peak state, whether or not he became transcendent was another matter. The current situation was that most people couldn't even reach the peak of advanced wizard. They traded directly, and neither of them had anything to say. Having the mental power potion, Baichi immediately had confidence, and his face glowed. Dolii, having the magic crystals, was in high spirits. They looked at each other, both very satisfied with the transaction. When are you leaving here? Baichi, feeling much more confident, immediately asked. Dolii thought for a moment and said, I'm not sure, maybe when I become transcendent, or maybe I'll leave in a while, depending on the time. Baichi couldn't wait for Dolii to leave quickly. He thought for a moment and said, don't call yourself Dolii when you go out in the future. The Ability Association already knows this name and may issue a full wanted order. After all, you killed someone. And an official. Dolii chuckled, do you have evidence? Don't talk nonsense without evidence. Baichi also chuckled. He said meaningfully, sometimes the authorities don't need evidence. If there's a chance, we'll meet outside in the future. As long as I advance to level 1, I'll also leave this place. Doman City is too small. He sighed, seeming equally dissatisfied with his current situation. Dolii became thoughtful. Indeed, as long as the authorities suspected, they would post a notice. After he killed Dis, there was a reward all over the street. So far, there were no clues. Whether it was Baichi or others, as long as they mentioned his affairs, the authorities would probably post a notice immediately. But it didn't matter, he didn't need that identity anymore. Dolii was already dead. The person living now was Lin Rui or Adu or even anyone. Just then, Dolii's expression changed. He looked at Baichi and said, how many people did you bring when you came? 3 people, all advanced guards. Dolii's heart sank. He immediately slowly squatted down and whispered to Victor, there are 3 people quietly approaching behind my house. Their movements are very small. Baichi was stunned, and Victor was also stunned. Behind the house? Isn't there a slope behind the house? Approaching from above, could it be? Then Baichi's expression changed, in the Assassin's Guild, my head is worth 50 gold coins. Could it be that they're here to kill me? Victor looked at Baichi, his eyes widened, 50 gold coins, so valuable. What terrible thing did this kid do to make people offer such a reward? Dolii mocked himself, this guy was really valuable. At this time, his expression changed, and he said, the other party is at the door. Although Victor didn't know why Dolii knew someone was coming, he deeply believed it. After all, there were many methods for wizards. He slowly drew his sword from his waist, while suppressing his aura. At this moment, the roof suddenly exploded, and a figure burst in. This person was dressed in grey, masked, and in tight-fitting clothes, holding a rapier in his hand. As soon as he came in, his eyes scanned the room and he rushed towards Baichi, extremely fast. The assassin knew who he was facing, so he didn't want to give the opponent time to cast a spell. Dolii and Victor didn't move, because the other 2 people landed from the other 2 directions at this moment. Splintered wood pierced every corner of the room. They quickly landed, and one of them flicked his wrist and rushed towards Victor, while the other rushed towards Dolii. 3 people, with very clear division of labor, they were really here to kill Baichi. Dolii had already changed his position at this time. Seeing someone enter, his expression looked a little flustered, and he hurriedly ran towards the door. Behind him, the man quickly approached, the rapier pierced through the wood chips and stabbed towards Dolii's back. At this critical moment of life and death, Dolii suddenly turned around, his expression becoming extremely solemn, and slapped towards the man. It seemed like just a light palm, but a raging flame suddenly rose from his palm, more than 3 feet high, the intense light flickering, illuminating the man's face. Chapter 110. Hand of Burning. The assassin paled in fright and hurriedly twisted his body, trying to dodge. Though this sword would certainly pierce Dorley, he would inevitably be struck by Dorley's palm. While Hand of Burning wasn't a powerful spell, being burned by flames of several hundred degrees was no joke. At this moment, Victor and the other person also engaged in battle. The great sword swept across, unleashing a fierce and unrestrained power that seemed to cleave the very air in 2. The person didn't even have time to react, only managing to parry slightly with their rapier. The next moment, the great sword violently struck the rapier, the overwhelming force sending both the person and their sword flying. Transcendent. The person roared in mid-air before crashing into the solid wall. They landed heavily with a groan, writhing in pain as they tried to get up. On the other side, Bichi was playing cat and mouse with the assassin. Although he didn't know martial techniques, his footwork wasn't bad. After the assassin who had been sent flying shouted, the remaining two assassins panicked. In an instant, the situation on the field changed dramatically. The assassin fighting Dorothy, sensing that things were going wrong, rolled on the ground and darted towards the nearby window. The assassin who had been toying with Bichi also turned his gaze towards the window, pacing back and forth near the door, crouching low, ready to pounce. He was utterly flustered. He had thought there were only a few little mice here, but he hadn't expected two big tigers as well. At this moment, Dorothy occupied the doorway, his hand emitting flames. The intense heat made the skin tingle even from several meters away. He couldn't go out through the door, but the windows on either side were viable options. Dorothy, watching the assassin who was chasing him and seeing his movements, flicked his left hand, throwing a potion bottle on the ground. At the same time, a material slipped into his left hand, and another flame burst forth, creating hand of burning in both hands. Then, he shifted his feet and lunged directly at the assassin who was trying to kill him from behind. If he let him escape through the window, Dorothy would lose all face. With both hands ablaze, Dorothy was even more terrifying than Victor. The assassin was instantly horrified, rolling to the base of the window and then pushing off forcefully, lunging towards the window. Just then, he felt his legs weaken, and his heart filled with dread. When had he been poisoned? At this moment, Dorothy pounced, his hands reaching forward, as if wielding two giant flaming swords, crashing forward. He actually wanted to release the flames from his hands for a ranged attack, but unfortunately, his mental power was insufficient. He tried to control the flames, concentrating them on his fingertips, and then swung his palm out. The flame left his body, and suddenly, a flash of inspiration struck him. His mental power seemed to follow the flame, detaching from his hand and rushing forward. In that instant, his mental power left his body's surface. The mental power in his sea of consciousness, which had already been stirred up by the assassin, suddenly exploded, instantly extending beyond his body, following the flames and rushing forward. In just a moment, a ball of fire landed at the assassin's feet, and another struck the assassin directly. The flames instantly rose, burning the man into a human torch. Ah, 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 ah. The flaming man struggled in place, crawling out through the window, the flames rising and igniting the window frame, causing the fire to spread. At this moment, Dorothy was incredibly clear-headed. After his mental power extended beyond his body, he knew that he had successfully entered the transcendent realm. The endless energy in the air, which his mental power touched, gave him the feeling of being in an ocean of energy. At this time, apart from the screams, Victor, Bichi, and the last assassin were deathly silent, all staring at Dorothy in shock. They had actually witnessed the birth of a novice-level wizard with their own eyes. It was simply unbelievable. The assassin who had been chasing Bichi stopped immediately, the rapier in his hand and his knees hitting the ground simultaneously with two thuds. His eyes were filled with terror as he knelt on the ground, unable to even hold his sword steady. Outside the window, the flames ignited the house. Soon, thick smoke billowed from the doorway, and the sounds of shouting could be heard from outside as people noticed the smoke. Thick smoke began to seep into the room, but no one moved, all quietly watching Dorothy. Dorothy sighed. He hadn't expected entering the novice level to be so easy. In his sea of consciousness, his mental power was exceptionally active. The original 180 copper coins rapidly increased, soon reaching 200, 210, 220, finally stopping at 240. In a matter of seconds, his strength had more than doubled. With his mental power extending beyond his body, he could sense the endless energy in the air. As long as he was willing, the energy in the areas his mental power could reach could be used by him. His mental power extended out, reaching every corner of the room, extending outside, reaching a distance of about 10 meters. He naturally knew that the room was on fire. At this moment, he had a flash of inspiration, and a spell model quickly formed in his sea of consciousness, and a ball of fire quickly formed in his hand, turning into a fireball. Dorothy had been simulating it for several months, but he always lacked mental power. Now that the number of copper coins had suddenly exceeded 240, his mental power had skyrocketed, and the new spell model formed almost instantly. After the magic model took shape, it quickly came to his hand, suspended in his palm. The energy in the surrounding air quickly filled the spell model. The spell model took effect, the energy was activated, and quickly formed a flame, forming a ball. Level 1 Wizardry, also known as Level 1 Magic, the small fireball spell, and it was formed in a short 3 seconds. This wizardry condensation speed had completely stunned everyone. Dorley looked at the small fireball in his hand and was quite satisfied. After advancing to level 1, being able to sense the energy in the air allowed magic to be condensed quickly, breaking away from the limitations of using spellcasting materials. There are many wizardries in level 1. The small fireball is just the lowest level. For slightly more advanced ones, if the mental power is insufficient, spellcasting materials are still needed to compensate in order to fully cast them. The flame of the small fireball was red, and its temperature was only slightly higher than Hand of Burning, but it could be used for ranged attacks. With ranged means, the wizard at this time could protect himself. Victor was shocked. After this kid entered the transcendent realm, he directly used magic. Did he not need to chant? Did he not need gestures? Did he not need to construct a spell model? Although he was a warrior, the warrior guild had very clear guidelines for dealing with magic. They made it very clear in the guild announcements about the advantages and disadvantages of mages. At long range, mages are invincible, but at close range, warriors are invincible. You. Dorley looked at the small fireball in his hand, a smile on his face. Should I thank you, or thank you? I didn't expect that I would break through like this. He was talking about Beachy. Beachy was speechless at this time, sighing, Don't. You're hitting me hard. You've cultivated for more than a year and entered the transcendent realm. I've cultivated for almost 5 years, and my mental power hasn't even reached perfection. I'm really ashamed. At this time, people were already coming over because the fire in the house was getting bigger. Dorley looked at the 2 people and the 2 assassins, saying, Let's go out. The house is going to catch fire. I don't know water-based wizardry. Victor suddenly stepped forward and slashed his sword at the assassin. At close range, the person's momentum was taken away, and without resistance, he was directly killed. P.S. In driving school, the next chapter will be later, around 5 or 6 o'clock. Chapter 111. The room was engulfed in flames, and the surrounding villagers took turns pouring water on it, but the fire was still raging. Soon, the flames from the room shot into the sky, becoming unstoppable. The villagers felt puzzled, how did the fire suddenly start here? Seeing that the fire couldn't be extinguished, they retreated one after another, looking at Victor, Beach and Dole in the crowd. Why did the fire suddenly start? What happened? But seeing their serious expressions and tense looks, no one dared to ask. At this time, the villagers vigilantly surrounded the vicinity of the house, clearing the nearby dry grass to create a fire break, fearing that the fire would spread. Behind them were the mountains, and if the fire spread there, it would be terrible. In the crowd, Dole looked at Victor, then helplessly at his backpack that he had just rescued, sighing, The losses are heavy, all my tools are gone. Beach's mouth twitched as well, not knowing what to say, it was all his fault. He lowered his head guiltily. Victor was also filled with emotion at this time. Although the room was burned down, Dole had thus become extraordinary in one leap. This span was quite amazing. The extraordinary of a wizard was different from that of a warrior. Their combat power increased unparalleled upon entering the extraordinary. As long as Dole was given some time, he could become a human-shaped turret. Wizards possess terrifying long-range capabilities. Why is it that in Doman City, wizards have always been transcendent? Although there has only ever been one level 1 wizard, they have suppressed other professions and become the highest authority, precisely because wizards are synonymous with power and mystery. There are simply too many ways to kill a person. He turned his head, his gaze complicated, Dr. Lin Rui, what about you next? Dole sighed. He had originally planned to stay for a while longer, but now it seemed. I will be leaving Doman City soon. There is no value in staying here anymore. In fact, he wanted to go to the small magic crystal mine that Bale mentioned even more. Magic crystals are everything. After becoming extraordinary, he was already able to utilize the energy between heaven and earth, but magic crystals were still widely used in magic, alchemy, and could almost run through the entire career of a wizard. Victor sighed and couldn't bear to turn his head away. If Dole left, the village would be without support, and they would only be able to rely on themselves in the future. Fortunately, Dole had already passed on some of his abilities to the village doctor. As long as they were passed down through the generations and not lost, the town would become even stronger than before. The house was on fire, and there were still 3 corpses inside, all burned to nothing. It was estimated that even the ashes were mixed with other wood, so naturally no one knew that there had been 3 assassins here. At this moment, Bale's figure came from a distance, jogging over, looking at this side with some confusion. Why did the house suddenly catch fire? At this time, he sensed something, and his dog eyebrows twitched. There were corpses in the fire. What surprised him even more was that Dole had entered the extraordinary at this time. What happened? Were those 3 corpses related to his entry into the extraordinary? Beach's face was a little pale as he looked at the flames. He said directly to the 2, "Then I'll go back first." Victor and Dole nodded at the same time. The 3 of them had very complicated gazes. After all, after this farewell, it was estimated that they might never see each other again in this lifetime. Victor looked at Dole, and Dole shrugged, saying, "Then I'll leave too, while it's still early." He felt a little heartache for the things in the fire. As for valuable things like magic crystals and finished potions, he had already brought them out from inside before the flames rose. Victor sighed and said, "Then in the future, forget it, you go." Dole waved to him, and at the same time waved to the surrounding villagers, "Hello uncles, I'm leaving." The villagers gathered around, with strange expressions. This guy was really preparing to leave this time. Dole didn't say much, carrying his big bag and taking Bale towards the bridge, arriving on the official road. He waved to Victor from afar, then waved to Beach, and walked towards the mountains. He quickly disappeared from everyone's sight. "Lord Bale, where is that magic crystal mine? Let's go mine it. I have already been promoted to a formal wizard and can start mining." The official road had been repaired, and there were only scattered small stones on the road. Dole walked while kicking the small stones, looking very relaxed. Bale snorted, "I lied to you. There is no micro-magic crystal mine. I just wanted to make you feel a sense of urgency." Dole's footsteps stopped immediately, his heart feeling empty, as if he had lost something. He had always been looking forward to it. "Damn it, you lied to me. So what if I lied to you? I'll bite you to death." Dole quickly rushed up, baring his teeth and claws. Bale jumped a few meters away, looking contemptuous, "Then you have to catch me first." Dole was a little distraught. What a beautiful dream, it was shattered by just one sentence. Chapter 112. A person walked quietly on the mountain road, with only the sounds of birds and insects in his ears, very quiet. Dory walked, recalling something, and took out a book from his arms. This was given to him by Beach, introducing the basic situation of the world they were in, as well as the basic overview of the West Ring continent under his feet. Beach suggested that he leave the Northern Kingdom and go to other countries. After all, in the Northern Kingdom, wild wizards are not welcome, especially a wizard of his type, specializing in potion making, who would be suppressed. Going to other empires would be better. He recommended Dory to the Glory Empire, which, although not a paradise for wizards, is an empire where wizards and ordinary people coexist. The things wizards need can be bought outside at any time, unlike the Northern Kingdom, where anything involving wizards can only be found in the black market, except through official channels. Dory thought carefully for a while, discussed it with Lord Bale, and decided to read the book first. This book was called The West Ring Continent Chronicle, which tells the story of tens of thousands of years of human history on this land, several empires and the characteristics of each empire. He quickly saw the Northern Kingdom. The characteristic of the Northern Kingdom is its iron-clad soldiers galloping across the land. The wizard profession is not outstanding, but is suppressed to a certain extent. In the Northern Kingdom, the warrior profession is the main profession. Knights, swordsmen, and other professions are everywhere, and even many warrior guilds and organizations have been derived. However, in terms of wizards, only one pitiful Imperial Ability Association supports it. After reading this, Dory knew why Beach wanted him to go to other empires. This place is really not suitable for wizard development. Many years ago, the Northern Kingdom suffered from wizards, and a large number of civilians and nobles died tragically. Therefore, they have no good feelings for wizards and prohibit the inheritance of wizardry among the people. It can be said that there is almost no room for wizard development here. Dory was speechless when he saw this. Without inheritance, what's the point? He should leave as soon as possible. Turning past the Northern Kingdom, he began to read the introductions and histories of other empires, finding it very interesting. In addition to the Northern Kingdom, there are 4 empires to the south, the Glory Empire, the East Ring Empire, the Radiance Empire, and the Dark Empire. The East Ring Empire is located near the east, close to the East Sea. The Glory Empire is due south and slightly west of the Northern Kingdom. The Dark Empire is in the west of the West Ring continent, and the Radiance Empire is in the middle of the Northern Kingdom and the Dark Empire, leaning towards the northwest. Among them, there are countless small empires, surviving by relying on the major empires. The entire West Ring continent is about 50,000 kilometers long from east to west and more than 60,000 kilometers long from north to south. The land area is unbelievably vast. Dory only glanced at it a few times, and felt that he was really a frog in a well. When he read books before, he always felt that the world was big and wonderful, but he didn't expect it to be so vast. He felt like he had opened up a new world, and a sense of pride arose in his heart. Since the world is so big, why not go and see it? But for now, let's leave the Northern Kingdom first. It's too unfriendly to wild wizards. Before becoming transcendent, it's fine, but after becoming transcendent, it is estimated that as soon as he is discovered, he will be immediately expelled. Rather than being expelled by others, it is better to go first. Going to the Glory Empire, he has to go through thousands of kilometers, crossing half of the Northern Kingdom. He only knew at this time that Chris County was still in the south of the Northern Empire, and the climate was not cold. If it were further north, the temperature would be at least 10 or 20 degrees lower than here. While reading the book, he walked. This walk took a day. They had not yet left this mountain range. The mountain road was rugged, and walking was particularly slow. They stayed overnight in a town at night, and only walked out at noon the next day. When they came to the last slope, the scene in front of them suddenly opened up. Except for the 2 sides and behind them, there were no more mountain peaks. Under the sky in front, there appeared an endless plain, vast, open, and boundless. Between the sky and the earth, there was only a white line. This is the plain, the vast plain. Dory sighed in his heart that he had been in the mountains for more than 10 years, and his vision was still too small. A winding road went forward along the Doman River. In the farther front, there was a series of towns and cities. Hundreds of kilometers away could be seen at a glance. On the vast plain, cities were clearly visible. The largest natural feature was the nearest Chris County, which could be seen from the hillside. Bale glanced at the front, and then looked at Bale's ignorant appearance, snorted twice, and said, "I have been to this world before. The Northern Kingdom is just a small country with no pattern. It only wants to develop the Northern Iron Cavalry, and completely ignores the wizard profession. Hehe, you must know that only wizards of the human race can be relied upon, and other professions are vulnerable." Dory greedily looked at the front, and also snorted in response, "You are an old monster who has lived for thousands of years, I am only 14 years old. What does the Northern Kingdom do to me? Let's go to the Glory Empire, at least it's more friendly to wizards there." He had already made up his mind at this time. Bale nodded his dog's head, "Okay, whatever you want. Also, you have entered level 1, haven't you thought about what meditation technique you want?" Dory took his gaze back from the distance and looked at Bale with some hope, "Then it depends on what meditation technique Lord Bale is willing to give me." Bale was speechless, "I thought you didn't want it. How could that be?" "I'm just waiting for you," Dory said pretentiously. "If I ask you first, you will definitely make trouble and give me a hard time. It's better to wait for you to take the initiative to speak." Dory had long figured out Bale's little temper and laughed secretly in his heart. Bale lowered his head. He underestimated Dory's shamelessness, so he thought for a while, raised his head, and fell into memories. "In the early years, I killed countless human wizards and obtained countless meditation techniques, but only a few could catch my eye. Each of them was an enemy that was very difficult for me to defeat. Each meditation technique represents a school: elementalism, summoning, darkness, spellcasting. Each has its own characteristics. Which one do you want?" Dory didn't know what so many of them did. His concept was limited to before level 1, and before level 1, there were only a few witchcrafts, which were all for laying the foundation and were useless. He thought for a while and asked, "Which category is the most orthodox and the most balanced?" "Orthodox is good, and balanced is perfect. Dory has read many books and understands it this way." Bale was a little speechless and said, "Orthodox only means that there are many people using it, it doesn't mean it is the strongest." And balance means that there are no characteristics. Are you sure? Dory became suspicious, since the most people use it, why isn't it the strongest? Doesn't balance mean there are no shortcomings? Why does it mean there are no characteristics? Bale blinked. Hey, Dory's understanding seems to be correct. There are no good or bad meditation techniques in this world, only good or bad people. This sentence has been passed down from ancient times to the present, and it is still verified in every era. I don't know how many people have used the most ordinary meditation techniques to achieve amazing feats, so it's not impossible. Bale thought carefully and felt that it was still a bit inappropriate. Then I will first tell you about the situation of the wizarding world, and then you can decide. The way you are, you don't know anything, and you dare to choose randomly after reading a few books. You are really fearless. Dory immediately said expectantly, then please, Boss Bale, hurry up and tell me. Chapter 113. Man and dog then went downhill, following the official road, following the Duiman River, towards the vast plain. Under the sunset, the two figures stretched longer and longer. It was already deep night when they entered the plain, and they didn't see many people on the way down the mountain. The first village encountered after entering the plain was more than 10 kilometers away, the first town after descending from the mountains. The town's defenses were very strict, with many watchtowers on both sides facing the mountains and forests, guards, and many arrow towers around the village, each with 4 or 5 middle-aged men holding large bows. Because he was alone and entered the town at dusk, Dole was questioned, but the guards' eyes were filled with respect as they looked at him. Daring to wander outside the mountains alone, he must be a very powerful archer, and looking at Dole's bow, they knew that this young man was very formidable. After randomly finding a place, the man and dog had dinner, and Dole witnessed the town at night on the plains. In the open spaces in the middle, several bonfires were lit, and the residents of the town, men, women, old and young, came out to sing and dance in the open space, enjoying themselves, completely different from the silence in the mountains. Dole felt his eyes widen. Even Duiman City wasn't this lively during the new year, just like what he saw in books. This situation continued until after 10 o'clock in the evening before it ended. There were many hotels in the town, and Dole randomly found one and checked in. This was his first night away from the mountain. Peaceful and unremarkable, the town didn't experience anything because of his arrival. Early the next morning, Dole left the town. Man and dog, walking and chatting, were not lonely. Bale had a lifespan of several thousand years, was knowledgeable, and while walking, guided Dole into the extraordinary world, telling many stories, and Dole also gained much more knowledge than normal people. For example, the concept of the world. Bale was not originally from this world, and ordinary people had not even left the Empire, let alone the entire West Ring continent, while Bale was a giant who had traveled through several worlds. The Wizard world, the Demon King world, the Necromantic world, these worlds unfolded slowly in front of Dole under Bale's narration. Dole's heart was filled with countless yearnings. The Northern Kingdom didn't seem big in the book's introduction, but going out from here required passing through several counties and 2 provincial capitals, so it wouldn't be easy to leave. Therefore, he planned to find a caravan in Chris County to set off together. Setting off alone would mean fewer things to worry about, but the danger would also be extremely high. Although Bale was there, Dole didn't want to rely too much on Bale's strength, which would not be beneficial to his professional development. After making up his mind, Dole and Bale analyzed it for a while and finally chose the direction of the meditation technique. That is, the orthodox meditation technique, preferably balanced development. There are no powerful cultivation methods, only powerful people. There are many powerful cultivation methods, but powerful people are rare. This is the norm in any world. Although Bale is knowledgeable, his thinking is indeed that of a hellhound, and he was finally persuaded by Dole. Bale said to Dole, the meditation technique is very crucial. It determines a person's future career path, a person's development, and finally, it must also fit a person's physical fitness. It cannot be messed with. His talent is inclined towards the wood and fire aspects, so it's best to find a relatively high-end cultivation method in these 2 aspects. Dole deeply believed in Bale's appraisal, and then looked at Bale's collection. This guy possessed a magical space, a mysterious space that could store many things, just like the storage rings in the wizard world, and had collected many things. Bale took out more than a dozen meditation techniques in one breath, all of which were advanced or higher. The meditation technique of Jacques Lucas, Flame Sword, Mixed Empty Hell, Ghost King, The Sound of Nature, Earth Giant, medicine king god, elven song. Dole was a little speechless, and had a renewed understanding of Baal's strength. How many people had this guy killed? Some of these meditation techniques were from the human race, and some were from other races, taken out only because of a slip of the hand. Dole picked and chose, and finally selected an otherworld version of the Child of the Elements meditation technique. Elemental beings are the most powerful native creatures in any world, and also the most mysterious creatures. They are born as elemental bodies, born with telepathy, and their strength is at least level 4, and at most even beyond level 7, or even level 9. It is rare to cultivate the Child of the Elements technique with a human body. Only if one cultivates to the 6th level or above can one transform into an elemental spirit, with unparalleled power. Even the Hellhound, as a level 7 creature, has a headache when facing these elemental beings. Baal was also a little surprised when Dole chose this technique, because this technique was simply too outrageous. It simulated the existence of elemental beings, which was completely different from the human body. In the end, it was easy to destroy one's physical body and turn into a pure elemental being. It was powerful, but the risk factor was also very high. This technique is priceless to witchcraft that only pursues strength, but for those who want to pursue power, there is not much opportunity, because after becoming an elemental being, one will lose the ability to reproduce. But Dole valued its one point, power. Of course, elemental beings also have shortcomings, which is that they need to have their own territory. After leaving a territory suitable for survival, their strength will be greatly reduced. Cultivating the Child of the Elements technique with a human body avoids this drawback to a certain extent, but correspondingly, the power is also greatly reduced, and the technique is created by humans, so it is impossible to truly become as powerful as a real elemental being. But Dole just liked it very much. In many novels he had read, there were human warriors who directly faced the great deeds of elemental beings. Elemental beings were indeed terrifying. Baal said it didn't matter, as long as you were willing to cultivate, we'll talk about the future later. He officially obtained this technique. Child of the Elements is a very advanced technique, even the most top-notch technique. It simulates the cultivation state of the way elemental beings are born. The book does not record one type of elemental being, but records in detail the existence mode and living environment of more than a dozen types of elemental beings, and lists them one by one according to the ranking, which can be cultivated gradually. Dole looked at it. There are a total of 12 secondary cultivation methods. The most basic elemental child cultivation method is the water elemental child, which can only be cultivated to level 4 at most, and is also the easiest to get started with. After cultivating to level 4, you can change to other cultivation methods. Dole looked at it. The content inside is good, but it does not match his own attributes. He directly abandoned it. The second type of earth element cultivation method, with Dole's own wood and fire attributes, the earth element method is actually okay, it's just that the cultivation is a little slower, it doesn't affect it, but he is still not satisfied, and the most basic earth element can only be cultivated to level 4. The third element is the ordinary fire elemental spirit. The fire elemental spirit can be cultivated to level 5, and level 5 is the form of the elemental lord, which makes him very satisfied. Chapter 114. Among the 12 forms, lightning and storm elements were the most violent, pure wind and water elements were the gentlest, and earth and ground elements were the most solid. However, in terms of power, the storm element was even more unrestrained. The storm element combined wind, lightning, and fire attributes, making its power unparalleled. Under normal circumstances, the lowest level storm element true form was at least level 6, only one level lower than Baal. After reading the book, Dore felt a surge of excitement. While others were still worried about meditation techniques, he had already obtained the world's top meditation technique. What more could he ask for in life? He would cultivate slowly, his heart filled with hope for the future. 2 days later, Dore, disguised as a wandering warrior, arrived at the entrance of Chris County. He had no carriage and walked very slowly. Chris County was enormous. From a distance, each side of the city wall was nearly 10 kilometers long, 7 or 8 times larger than Doman City. The city walls were all made of various materials mixed together, not just single stones or other things. Around the city walls, there was a watchtower every so often, as well as arrow towers. There were also many crenellations on the city walls, especially on the side facing the distant mountains, where the number of crenellations was even denser. Dore pondered as he looked at this. On and below the city walls, the soldier's energy was surging, very powerful. Even from a distance, Do-Rei could feel that their strength was almost at the entry level. And among the soldiers, the officers were directly at the extraordinary level. This was a county city, its strength was truly powerful. When he thought that the squadron leader of Doman City was only at the intermediate level, Do-Rei shook his head. The city gate was bustling with people, including merchant groups, ordinary people and ordinary carts, slowly entering the city. There were also many farmers selling their own produce on both sides of the city gate, which Do-Rei found very novel. Apart from things from the mountains, he had hardly eaten any fruit. Since he had nothing to do, after some bargaining, he bought some fruit, held it in his hand, and followed the crowd slowly into the city. The city gate was very lively, and the inside was just as lively. Entering through the city gate, one could immediately see a wide street and tall buildings on both sides, with shops, restaurants, and hotels, everything one could want. The prosperous city gave Do-Rei a new understanding of cities. There were many people on the street, much more lively than Doman City, giving off a festive feeling. There were also many people carrying various weapons on the street, all of whom were professionals, more professionals than in Doman City. Do-Rei bought some fruit, and as he walked, he picked up the fruit and ate it, like a child who had never seen the world, casually strolling down the street. His purpose now was to see the world. After becoming extraordinary, the road ahead was no longer so tense, and in order to figure out the cultivation method of the child of fire element in the meditation technique, he needed to take his time and not rush. Just then, a young man of about the same age as him walked over from in front of him, came directly in front of him, bowed and said, "Young brother, is this your first time here? I can be your guide, for only 1 silver coin a day. Whatever you want to buy, wherever you want to go, I will lead the way, guaranteed to satisfy you." When Do-Rei saw this young man, he sized him up and was a little surprised. Was this a broker? He had read about them many times in books, but this was the first time he had actually seen one. The asking price was also particularly shocking, a guide actually cost a silver coin a day? He sensed the power on the other person's body, which was about an intermediate apprentice, but his clothes looked a little tattered, and the narrow sword hanging from his waist also seemed a bit damaged. An ordinary civilian? He thought about it, he didn't lack this 1 silver coin, so he looked around and saw many people like this young man, but this young man had come over first, and the expressions of the others seemed regretful. The young man had been sizing up Do-Rei for a long time. This guy looked like it was his first time here. He was also just asking casually. If he wasn't willing to pay a silver coin, he would just pretend he hadn't asked, anyway, there was no loss. At this time, Do-Rei nodded and said, "Okay, then you lead the way, I want to go to the Adventurers Guild." The young man's expression immediately shook, he lowered his head, stretched out his hand to lead, "Please follow me." The Adventurers Guild, Warriors Guild, Assassins Guild, these are large organizations spanning several countries. For professionals, if he wants to go to another country, then registering as an adventurer and then following a caravan is the safest way. Although it is slower, the caravan has rich experience and takes the safest route, making it the easiest way to reach. In addition to the Adventurers Guild, ordinary warrior professions also go to the corresponding professional guilds for registration and appraisal. After getting the appraisal, registering among the adventurers instead has special treatment. For example, an extraordinary hunter, after registering at the Hunter Guild and obtaining a level 1 certificate, registering at the Adventurers Guild will give him level 1 treatment, without needing to start from the lowest level adventurer. Do-Rei wanted to ask about the Wizards Guild, but unfortunately, the Northern Kingdom didn't have such a thing. If there was, it would be underground, and ordinary people wouldn't know about it. The Wizards Alliance he had heard about from the Guardian last time was quite interesting. The young man led the way in front, and Do-Rei followed behind. Soon, the young man couldn't help but say, "Young brother, do you want to be a real adventurer?" Do-Rei didn't know why he asked, and nodded, "Yes, is there a problem?" The young man immediately smiled, "I see that your strength is stronger than mine, you should be a senior warrior or hunter. It would be better to register at a professional guild first before going to the Adventurer Guild." Do-Rei naturally knew this principle, so he shook his head and said, "I'm not very familiar with professional skills, so forget it, let's go directly to the Adventurers Guild. Also, I want to ask, what is the situation with the Shinik Society here?" Hearing the 3 words Shinik Society, the young man was stunned, then thought for a moment before saying, the Shinik society doesn't pay attention to you wandering professionals. Young brother, don't be afraid, they are targeting black wizards. Doré immediately couldn't help but smile wryly, this guy probably misunderstood him. He shook his head and stopped talking. Soon, they passed through the bustling streets and arrived at the Adventurers Guild. Chris County was several times larger than Doman City. The roads in the city were wide and open, and the buildings on both sides of the road were also mostly giant, very large. Doré thought that the Adventurers Guild would be like the Assassins Guild, with many projects and preferably built in many activity venues. Unexpectedly, when he actually stood at the Adventurers Guild, he realized that the Adventurers Guild might be more powerful than he imagined. This was a domed 3-story building, covering a very large area, even larger than the city lord's mansion in Doman City. The words Adventurers Guild were written at the entrance. Next to it stood a sign, writing about adventurer ratings, adventurer professional level divisions, and so on. At the entrance of the building, many professionals came and went, very lively. Doré saw many extraordinary professionals here, including swordsmen, orthodox warriors, hunters, and other professions. There were more extraordinary professionals in Chris County than Doré imagined, and the relationship between extraordinary and non-extraordinary was not as strict as Doré thought, but very harmonious. Seeing this, Doré showed a sigh in his eyes, his vision was still a little short-sighted. Chapter 115. Walking into the Adventurers Guild, he immediately saw the registration window, and Doré walked over. The young man followed closely behind him. There were a total of 5 registration windows, but not many people were registering. Doré found an empty window and sat down. The registration clerk was a young lady, holding something that looked like a photo in her hand. "Excuse me, are you here to register? Do you have a professional grade certificate?" Doré shook his head, "I don't have any relevant certificates. I'm about the strength of a high-level warrior, so just registering as a regular adventurer is fine." The young lady seemed to have seen this often, and without asking any further questions, she took out a form, handed it to him, and said, "Please fill in the relevant information." Doré glanced at it. It was nothing more than asking where he was from, his age, and his name. Doré took out a pen and filled it in one by one. At this moment, the young lady's eyes lit up, "What beautiful handwriting!" Doré smiled, "Thank you for your compliment." After filling out the form, the young lady showed a sweet smile and said, "Sit up straight and don't move, I'll take your picture." Doré immediately sat up straight. Soon, in less than 5 minutes, after paying a high registration fee of 50 silver coins, a silver badge fell into Doré's hand, with his name and level on it. Level 10 Adventurer, Lin Rui. Leaving the registration window, Doré felt a little heartache. Registering was actually so expensive. He casually threw a silver coin he had found to the young man and said, "Where do I go to accept missions? Take me to see." The young man took the silver coin and was immediately overjoyed. He hadn't misjudged the person. He carefully put away the silver coin and led Doré to the hall. Arriving at the hall, he saw a huge screen in the middle of the hall, projecting thousands of lines of text, with the text scrolling up and down. Those lines of text were the missions. When he saw the screen, Doré thought of wizards, because only alchemy could create such a wonderful thing. That screen shows the missions. If you see a mission you like, you can go to the mission registration desk to accept it. The mission details include the requirements for accepting the mission and the minimum strength required. "You can take a look," the young man enthusiastically introduced to Doré. Doré had already begun to browse. Soon, he saw a mission that met his requirements. Blazing Flame Merchant Company recruitment, heading to the Eternal Forest. Below the mission were the requirements, the employment period, and the skill requirements. Doré looked at it and felt that he could barely meet the requirements. He had the true strength of a high-level professional, and his archery skills were also not low. The Eternal Forest was located on the border between the Northern Kingdom and the Glorious Empire, extending all the way to the North Sea, a forest with a huge area. The Eternal Forest was not controlled by humans, and its area was so large that it was even larger than a human empire. It was full of magical beasts, but there were also intelligent races, such as elves, dwarves, gnomes, giants, and ogres, all living in the Eternal Forest. The fact that this merchant company was going to the Eternal Forest clearly meant that its strength should not be underestimated. Doré had read many books and knew that such large merchant companies were extremely strong, with a large number of high-level experts, but they also needed low-level people like them to accompany the merchant company as service personnel, but not in large numbers. He felt that he could apply. He went to the registration desk, announced that he would accept the mission, and the person pointed to the side, saying that the people from the Blazing Flame Merchant Company were over there. You should apply first, and if you are hired, come back here to register. Dore gave an "oh." So that was their process. So he took bail over. The people from the Blazing Flame Merchant Company occupied a separate small room with a sign on the door. 4 or 5 burly men were standing there. To Dore's shock, these people in charge of recruitment were all as strong as level 2, and one of them was even at level 3, which was very impressive. Of course, this was not something he could know on his own, Baal told him. These people were really strong. He muttered to himself, wondering if he should apply. Although a merchant company with such strength guaranteed safety, if they faced danger, the risk factor would also greatly increase, because anything that could attack such a caravan, whether it was a human force, another race, or a magical beast, would be ridiculously strong. He began to have second thoughts. Forget it, let's change it. My identity must not be exposed. Just then, he saw the person next to the level 3 expert's eyes light up and look over at him. Dore felt uneasy. A middle-aged man came up to Dore with a smile. Little friend, are you interested in joining my Blazing Flame Merchant Company? He had seen Dore walking straight over, but after seeing them, he had started to have second thoughts. He originally didn't want such weaklings, but the wizard Carl and the team told him that this was a wild transcendent wizard. A wild transcendent wizard was more attractive than a level 2 warrior, so he immediately came forward to ask. Dore looked up and glanced at the magician, and his second thoughts became even stronger. I'm just walking around, I have no intention of joining your merchant company. Dore looked at the man and slowly backed away. The magician was also stunned. He said something to the person next to him and then chased after Dore. Little friend, are you planning to go to the glorious empire? Dore was walking, but when he heard this, he slowed down. He was going to listen to what he had to say. Only a wizard could understand a wizard. The man quickly came up to Dore, slightly released his mental power, and then slowly withdrew it. He smiled gently, little friend, don't be nervous. In the Northern Kingdom, wild wizards are not welcome, but with a merchant company as a guarantor, we can keep you safe. We are very short of people. The addition of a transcendent wizard is worth more than a level 2 warrior. We can give you the treatment of a level 2 warrior. Dore stopped and looked at the man. The man had a kind face and a gentle tone, and he looked easy to talk to. He thought for a while and said, I do want to go to the glorious empire. The Northern Kingdom is not suitable for the development of wizards. You are also a wizard, why don't you stay and cultivate properly? Why do you want to follow the merchant company? That was what he wanted to ask. Carl shrugged and showed a helpless expression, I'm actually from the glorious empire. Following the merchant company is also a last resort. I have no talent for alchemy, no talent for forging, and no talent for magic patterns. I only have elemental talent. It doesn't make money, and professional advancement is too difficult. Dore was stunned. Did such a person exist in this world? Besides the most basic elemental talent, he had no other talent? How was that possible? Seeing Dore's confused expression, Carl knew that this would be the case and said helplessly, if you join our merchant company, in addition to the adventurer level remuneration given according to the agreement, we will give you the treatment of a wizard in the team. You don't need to patrol, you don't need to defend, you only need to provide remote fire support, how about it? Dore was actually a little tempted. It was not bad to have a wizard who was stronger than him lead the way. The noisy surroundings made Dore a little annoyed, but he quickly made up his mind and carefully said, are you sure you will follow the treatment you said? Carl smiled, you underestimate the role of a wizard, even though you may have just entered level 1. He saw through Dore's level at a glance. Oh, by the way, what talent do you have? Chapter 116. P.S. I'm at driving school, so I can't update much. Once I'm done with things here, I'll update at least 6,000 words a day. The test is next Tuesday. If I pass, I'll move on to section 3. If I don't pass, I'll give up on getting AD license. Driver's licenses are too difficult. Wah! 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 Although they were both wizards, Dore couldn't reveal his secrets to others, especially his talent for alchemy, which was too coveted. He looked at Carl and said, I have talents in magic tattoos and alchemy. Carl immediately became envious. Hey, wait for me, I'll go talk to them. He quickly passed through the crowd and returned to the Blazing Flame Merchant Guild's team. After a moment, he walked over with a smile and said, "It's done. This is the token. Go register with the adventurers first, and then we'll sign another contract." Duray glanced at Carl. This guy was nice, and his face was the kind that looked like a good person. He shouldn't be a bad guy. He took the token and went to register. Soon, he came back and stood in front of the level 3 big shot. The man was a middle-aged man with a beard. He looked at Duray, his eyes shining. He stood up and extended his hand to him. "Welcome, welcome. Welcome to join our Blazing Flame Merchant Guild. It's an honor for our guild to have a wizard join us. I'm Ryan, the supervisor in charge of recruitment this time." Duray handed him the form and said somewhat shyly, "Lord Ryan, my name is Lin Rui. Please guide me in the future." The other 2 level 2 warriors also smiled at this time and shook hands with Duray one by one. "We are the guard captains. I am Penk, and this is the reconnaissance team captain, Leo. This is our accompanying wizard, Carl. Hello, hello." He turned his head, let Bear come forward, and said, "This is my pet, Bear." Only then did the 3 notice Bear. Ryan narrowed his eyes, and the corners of his mouth twitched slightly. With his level 3 strength, he hadn't even noticed this dog just now. What was going on? This child seemed very shy, and it was obvious that this was his first time out. But what was going on with this dog? At this time, he saw the dog looking at him. That gaze seemed like the gazes of those important people looking at him. Scrutiny, indifference, and finally disregard. What the hell? Ryan didn't dare to underestimate him. As someone who traveled north and south all year round, he directly made the most basic movement, bowing slightly to Duray and Bear. Seeing this action, Leo, Penk, and Carl were stunned. What was the supervisor doing? This was just a dog. Could it be that it was different? At this time, they saw Bear standing in Duray's shadow, seemingly not wanting to pay attention to them. This dog has become a spirit. Ryan was in a great mood and asked Carl to take Duray over and arrange work. Although he might know that Duray was just an ordinary level 1 wizard, a wizard was still a wizard. To some extent, they were much stronger than warriors, and this one had a talent for alchemy. As long as he took out a little something, their safety would be guaranteed. Walking out of the Adventurers Guild, Duray sent the young man away and came outside with Carl. Carl waved his hand, and a carriage quickly came from a distance. There was a flag on the carriage with a flame on it. "Lord Carl." The coachman got off the carriage and bowed respectfully. Carl smiled, "Take the 2 of us to the camp. Not bad today, we recruited a wizard." The coachman glanced at Duray, somewhat shocked. Could they recruit a wizard in this place? He didn't dare to neglect and said, "Wizard Lord, then please get in the carriage." The carriage was just an ordinary carriage. The carriage looked very strong and reliable. After entering the carriage, Duray saw that the facilities inside were very simple, but there were very soft cushions. He quickly understood that comfort should be the first priority for long journeys. The carriage slowly started and headed out of the city. At this time, Duray relaxed and looked at Carl. "Lord Carl, your strength. Level 2. Carl held up 2 fingers. Duray immediately became respectful. A level 2 wizard had at least 3 or 4 times his mental power, could release a variety of spells, and was several times stronger than him. Carl smiled faintly. "Skill sets are specialized. I am purely an elemental spellcaster. I might be stronger than you in casting spells, but I don't have other talents." He sighed. "Elemental mages also need to do experiments. Without a way to earn money, I can't even afford experimental equipment." Duray's face became embarrassed. Although wizards seemed high-end, they easily faced the crisis of lack of money. This was the consensus of all wizards. Carl directly told him this, obviously truly treating him as one of his own. He immediately felt relieved. This trip was basically stable. He reached out and touched Bear's head. Bear took the opportunity to rest his head on his lap, looking very comfortable. "I only know a small fireball now. I can probably make the fireball technique in 3 to 5 days, and then I will have combat power to ensure that I won't drag everyone down." "Fireball technique? Do you have a fire talent?" Duray nodded and said, "Yes." Carl nodded. Although the fireball technique is only level 1 wizardry, if used properly, it is much more destructive than other wizardries. If you can learn dual casting, then you can speak more confidently with the boss. Duray smiled and nodded. The two stopped talking. The carriage slowly left the city, and the road outside became bumpy. Before long, the carriage stopped. This was a very large merchant guild. The camp area alone exceeded tens of thousands of square meters, with as many as 20 or 30 tents. There were also many carriages and patrol teams. Their pack animals were mainly a very tall horse. Duray didn't recognize them, but they looked tall and mighty. Karl led Duray in from the camp entrance, and many people greeted him. It seemed like he had good relationships. Karl was always very gentle, not only in the Adventurers Guild, but also in the camp. Duray now understood that this might be his personality. Including you and me, there are 4 wizards in total. Besides me, the others are level 1. The 4 of us will stay together. If you want to do something, you can do it. Karl introduced his work as he walked. Our task is to detect danger in advance or provide long-range fire support during combat. I see you're carrying a bow. And a pet? Is your other profession a hunter? Duray turned his head, glanced at Bear, who was looking around, and then shook his head. No, my main profession is an archer, and Bear is my partner. Karl smiled slightly. An archer is fine, but archers have single target attacks, which are not as powerful as a wizard's fireball technique. So, if you can learn the fireball technique as soon as possible, you will be much stronger than an archer in long-range firepower. Duray looked solemn and nodded slightly. I will work hard. Within 5 days, I will be able to create the spell model of the fireball technique. Karl nodded. The fireball technique was one of the most basic wizardries. Every meditation technique came with a spell model. No matter what meditation technique Duray practiced, he should have the fireball technique. Most wandering wizards didn't even have a spell model. Duray was considered good. The two walked through the camp and came to the largest tent in the middle. There were several small tents there. At this time, the two of them crawled into a small tent. There were 2 people in the tent, Yvonne and Candace. They introduced themselves to each other and greeted each other. Yvonne was dressed like an ordinary nobleman around 30 years old. After seeing Duray, his eyes didn't care much. Candace was slightly younger, also around 25 or 6 years old, and was also wearing brocade clothes. His status in the crowd shouldn't be very low. He nodded slightly, and then read the book by himself. Chapter 117. Dory was stunned. These two, with their arrogant attitudes? They were both just level 1 wizards, where did they get the courage to act so high and mighty? Just then, Yvonne noticed Bale walking in from outside. He immediately frowned. Whose dog is this? Get it out of here. Dory's face instantly darkened. Karl's gentle expression also turned unpleasant. He said calmly, Bale is Lin Rui's partner. You don't have to like him, but please don't speak carelessly. This is a merchant caravan, not a place where you can do whatever you want. Yvonne raised his head, looking at Karl with a mocking expression. So what? Just a wandering wizard. I don't like dogs. Get out. Having said that, he narrowed his eyes, looking at Dory with a dangerous glint. Having the status of nobility does give one the capital to be arrogant. Dory's face darkened. He didn't want to cause trouble, but that didn't mean he was afraid of it. Just then, a black shadow shot out with a whoosh, incredibly fast. Before anyone could see clearly, Yvonne had already fallen to the ground, screaming miserably. Everyone saw Bale with one front paw on his face, one paw on his arm, and his large mouth already biting into his left arm, blood flowing freely. Ah, 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 ah. Bale bit down hard, his mouth full of sharp teeth sinking deeply into the flesh, looking like he was about to bite it off. Quick, make your dog let go. My arm, my arm. Ivan's shrill screams echoed through the surroundings. Karl was stunned. The arrogant young man named Candace was also stunned. Looking at Yvonne, who was still screaming miserably, a chill suddenly ran through his heart. This dog was too fierce. At such close range, no mage could stand a chance against it. If it bit him, wouldn't he be done for? He suddenly felt that underestimating this wandering wizard was not a good thing. Karl's expression also became somewhat intriguing. Things had happened too fast. Before he could react, Bale had already pounced. No matter how strong Yvonne was, being caught by this dog at close range rendered any magic useless. This dog had some tricks. He felt a little schadenfreude, but then his expression changed. Lin Rui, tell Bale to stop. We don't have a pharmacist, and the injury will be difficult to heal. Door's attitude changed at this moment. Looking at Yvonne, he looked completely nonchalant. It's fine. I know some common medicine-making methods. A person with a foul mouth should scream a little longer. Isn't this person good at shouting? Let him keep shouting. Carl immediately understood the newcomer's temper. This one was probably not an easy character either. He immediately felt a headache coming on. Just then, Candace stood up, staring intently at Dory, and said, "Make your dog stop. We're all wizards, why be like this?" Dory turned his head and glanced at Candace, saying, "Now it's your turn to start playing the good guy." Candace's expression changed. He could see that Lin Rui was truly angry, so he sighed and said, "We still have to travel together for 3 or 4 months. This isn't good, is it?" Dory snorted, a sneer on his lips. "I like others to watch my face, I don't like watching other people's faces." He waved his hand, and Bale released his mouth, slowly retreating, but still baring his sharp teeth, which were stained with blood, making him look ferocious and terrifying. Yvonne was in so much pain that he was about to lose consciousness. He didn't dare to make a sound. He had heard Door's words, and a chill ran through his heart. This damned wild wizard, he would definitely make him pay in the future. He tried hard to stimulate his physical body with his mental power to heal the wound. Candace glanced at the ferocious Bale, took out a bottle of potion from his arms, and went forward to treat Yvonne. After all, they were on the same side. At this time, Dory glanced at his medicine, casually threw 2 bottles of medicine on the ground, turned around, and walked out of the tent. Carl followed Dory out of the tent, his expression complex. "They have noble status, it's normal for them to look down on us." Bale did a good job standing up to them. He gave Bale a thumbs up. Dory sighed at this time, "Where are we staying?" Carl heard the helplessness in Door's words, and smiled. "We wizards each have a tent, so your tent will be arranged in a while. You don't have to stay with them. By the way, can you make ordinary potions?" Dory nodded. He didn't plan to pretend anymore. He had to let people know his value to better protect him, so he said, "When I got the meditation technique, I got a few pages of basic potion making knowledge. There's muscle regenerating potion, tendon regenerating potion, and trauma potion. If the camp has the materials, I can make some." Carl was overjoyed and immediately said, "Then I'll go talk to the steward and have the materials and equipment allocated to you. As long as you can make them, we'll buy them at 1/3 of the market price." Dory was a little puzzled. "These are all worthless things, why?" Carl shook his head. "In the Northern Kingdom, even the lowest level alchemical medicines are hard to find. It's best if you can make them. You need to know that every time we come out, we're most afraid of injuries and illnesses, which can easily cause inflammation. I also have a few pages of magic potion recipes here. You can take them and memorize them to see if you can make them." After saying that, he couldn't wait to take Dory to another tent. This was just a small episode. Door's tent was built in the evening, right next to the central tent, close to Carl's tent. Because of his potion-making skills, he received great treatment. In the evening, a middle-aged man in a formal dress came to his tent. He was the chief steward of the entire caravan and the person in charge of this merchant run, Jacques. Jacques was wearing light armor and had a large sword hanging from his waist. He didn't look like a merchant, but rather like a powerful warrior. He only brought 2 people, but one of them was the steward of the Adventurers Guild, Ryan, whom Dory had met at noon. He didn't recognize the other one, but he was wearing ordinary silk clothes and seemed to have some status. Carl was also there. He introduced, Steward Carlyle, a level 3 swordsman. "You've met Ryan. The other one is the finance steward, Billy. Billy is mainly responsible for the potion matters." Dory was a little surprised to see all the top leaders of the entire caravan at once. Was potion making so popular? "Greetings, esteemed sirs." Dory kept his attitude very low. Carlyle was tall and burly, with a solemn face. When he saw Dory, a gentle smile appeared on his face. "Hello, young brother Lin Rui. It seems that Carl has found me a good helper this time. If you can make potions, you'll be helping us a lot. Carl told me that according to industry rules, we'll provide the materials and buy your potions at 30% of the market price, so you won't be working for nothing." Dory was a little unaccustomed to such straightforward talk. It was his first time joining a merchant caravan, and he didn't know what the rules were. "I'll leave it all to the esteemed sirs." Carlyle nodded. Dory was quite easy to talk to. It seemed that it was his first time out. If it were a real pharmacist, the price would have been raised to the sky at this time. "All right, young brother is quick to speak. I won't say much more. Let's do it that way. I'll have people purchase some things. Also, young brother knows some basic alchemy and magic runes? What can you do now?" Dory showed off his abilities, mainly in terms of vigilance. These were all basic things, nothing special. Carlyle nodded. They didn't need these things. Although vigilance was useful, 100 meters was too short. It might be useful in the mountains, but it wasn't needed now. Once they left here, they wouldn't encounter mountains for hundreds of miles. Then he said, "I'll have Billy draft a new agreement. How about we sign it again?" Dory glanced at Carl, who nodded at him. Chapter 118. The agreement process was uneventful. It was quickly signed. Delay carefully reviewed the agreement and had a general understanding of it. Besides his primary duties of providing remote fire support and some alchemical assistance, the caravan would purchase anything else he could offer, which was acceptable. Plus, there was some extra income, which Delay found pleasing. After seeing Caroline and the others off, Delay was finally able to rest. In the evening, the campfire in the camp was lit, illuminating the many tents. Sitting in his tent, watching the vague figures outside, Delay felt a sense of unreality. Was he really about to embark on an adventure? It was actually quite exciting. However, embarking on a journey was one thing, but he still had to do what he needed to do. The main task before him was to study the meditation technique, Child of the Fire Element. He had obtained this meditation technique 2 days ago, but Delay hadn't fully grasped it yet. He was still missing a part. Tonight, he would study it again, and perhaps he could begin practicing it tomorrow. In addition to the meditation technique, he also needed to arrange the spell model for Fireball. In comparison, the spell model for Burning Hand only required 36 nodes. However, the Fireball spell model actually had fewer points, only 22. But unlike the planar spell model of Burning Hand, Fireball was already a three-dimensional form, a complete icosahedron constructed from triangles. Triangles have a stable structure, which has many applications in alchemy. In Fireball, this model is used. Furthermore, the power of Fireball can be adjusted by increasing the injection of mental power into the nodes of the icosahedron, or by increasing the volume of the spell model to increase the power of the spell. This is a very scalable magic, unlike Burning Hand, which has basically no value for growth. The spell model of Small Fireball is the same as Burning Hand. It has a few more nodes, but it is still planar. Unlike Fireball, the range of Small Fireball is very short, only about 5 or 6 meters, so few people use it. Planar and three-dimensional are different. Planar only needs to be extended on one surface, without involving collisions or spatial distances, while a three-dimensional structure requires very rigorous thinking and structure. The construction process cannot have even the slightest deviation, otherwise it will easily fail. After considering these things, Delay decided to prepare for both. He would spend half his time constructing the meditation technique and half his time studying Fireball, doing both simultaneously. Child of the Fire Element requires visualizing the form of a fire elemental. The essence of this meditation technique requires visualizing a complete fire element, but where could Delay find a fire element? He could only visualize a fake fire element based on the description in the meditation technique. If he ever encountered a real fire element in the future, he could go and take a look. Constructing a fake fire element was not very difficult. After all, it was fake, and the details could be a bit rough. After dealing with some of the details of the meditation technique, Delay began to simulate it. First, he completely dispersed the copper coins, then transformed his mental power into flames, and then condensed these flames into a human form. It sounded easy, but it was actually very difficult, because after mental power transformed into flames, the control became exponentially more difficult. It was not easy to condense the flame-shaped mental power. Just controlling the mental power itself almost exhausted Delay's energy. He would need to spend some time to get started, but he wasn't in a hurry. Flames are irregular, as described in the meditation technique, but they contain rules. When Delay transformed into flames, he understood the uncertainty of these rules. After a little attempt, he knew that his entry time might be delayed for a while. Soon, midnight passed, and he hadn't even visualized a leg of the fire elemental. Too difficult. Soon, he fell into a deep sleep, forgetting to organize the fireball spell model that he had planned for the second half of the night. He woke up in the morning to a series of shouts. Getting out of bed and opening the tent flap, he saw pairs of guards running circles around the tent, their steps not uniform, but their speed was not slow. This was only a part of them. Some were wiping their weapons, and others were shooting arrows in the distance. Delay felt a little uncomfortable. At this time, he noticed that the ratio of men to women in the caravan was surprisingly unbalanced. All he could see were men. There were very few female guards or adventurers. The few he saw looked almost like men, their muscles even more terrifying than Delay's. He shook his head and crawled back into the tent. At this time, Bale had also woken up and was lying listlessly at the foot of Delay's bed, stretching lazily. Bale's actions were not controlled by Delay, and Delay didn't want to restrain this master. He could do whatever he wanted. Anyway, no one here could beat him. Yesterday's lesson to that noble was an example. Lord Bale, what form does a fire elemental spirit take? Delay felt bored and asked. Bale had finished stretching at this time. He glanced at Delay, and suddenly a force surged from his body, enveloping the entire tent. Then, he opened his mouth and spat out a flame, emitting an astonishing heat. These flames quickly formed a flame-shaped elemental person in the middle of the tent. Delay's eyes widened. Was this the elemental spirit? He carefully observed it. Bale's voice came out unhurriedly, the best way to observe a fire elemental spirit is to summon one. That's a third-level spell, you can't use it, so I've simulated a fire elemental spirit for you to look at first. Delay hadn't learned such high-end knowledge. Summoning a fire elemental spirit sounded very powerful, but he couldn't use a third-level spell. The fire elemental spirit was white, and the flame temperature was very high, emitting intense heat. The entire tent was shrouded in terrifying heat. If it weren't for Bale's power, the entire tent would have been reduced to ashes in an instant. Delay didn't dare to observe with his mental power. He quickly discovered that this fire elemental spirit was completely different from what he had imagined. First of all, it was not completely humanoid. It had no legs. The bottom was a group of flames in an irregular shape, and only the upper body was human. He had visualized legs all night yesterday. Now it seemed truly embarrassing. The form of the fire elemental spirit quickly left an impression in his mind. He waved his hand, signaling that Bale was done. Bale opened his mouth and sucked the fire element back. He had limited power now, and he couldn't waste any of it. The temperature of the tent returned to normal. It was then that Bale discovered that he was covered in hot sweat, and even his clothes were soaked. Just then, a rough female voice came from outside, Lin Rui, what's wrong with your tent? Can't open it. This was a strange voice, and Delay was a little confused. Then the tent opened, a hand reached in, lifted the curtain, and then revealed a burly woman. She looked at the curtain somewhat inexplicably, wondering why she couldn't open it just now. Delay looked at the woman and saw that she was holding a wash basin, and immediately understood what was going on. This was a maid. The woman looked at the curtain a few times, then looked at Delay standing in the middle of the tent, cracked her mouth, smiled heartily, and said, I'm responsible for washing up for several wizard adults in the morning. You can call me Camel Bell. P.S. I will take the second subject exam tomorrow, and I can resume the update after the exam. Chapter 119. Camel Bell. A woman with such a strange name? Dory nodded slightly and said, Hello, put it down. Camel Bell glanced around cautiously, then placed the basin and towel on the ground next to the doorway. I'll come back in half an hour to take it away. Dory nodded and asked, Where do we eat breakfast? Camel Bell smiled and said, The wizards all eat in Lord Carl's tent. You can go over in half an hour. Breakfast is at 8 in the morning, lunch at 12 noon, and dinner at 6 in the evening, 3 meals in total. Dory indicated that he understood. Thank you. You're welcome. Camel Bell glanced at Dory with some amazement. You're really young. Then she turned and walked out of the tent. Watching her retreating figure, Dory muttered in his heart, Of course, I'm young. I'm only 14 years old, just made up to look 20. The caravan would stay in Chris County for 3 days, purchasing local specialties, medicinal herbs and animal furs, as well as some special ores, and then take them to other places to sell. Chris County was most famous for its medicinal herbs because of the vast mountains in the distance, the Doman Mountains. Dory had applied for the job the day before yesterday, and this morning was the third day. They would leave early tomorrow morning. After washing his face and staying in the tent for a while, Dory got up, left the tent, and came outside. At this time, he saw many carriages coming from the direction of Chris County, fully loaded with goods. He just glanced at them and turned to Carl's tent. As soon as he entered the tent, he saw a table in the middle, and several servant-like people were cleaning up. Yvonne and Candace had already arrived, standing on either side of the tent, while Carl sat leisurely in the chair inside. None of the three spoke. Seeing Dory enter, Yvonne covered his heavily bandaged arm and glared at him resentfully, then turned his head away. Candace stared straight ahead, while Carl stood up from his chair. "I was just about to have someone call you. I didn't expect you to come." Dory ignored the other two and nodded to Carl, saying, "I asked Camel Bell." Carl nodded. At this moment, the servants had already placed the food on the table, setting out plates, knives, forks, and chairs. The head servant then said, "Please, the four lords, eat." Bar didn't come, so there were only 4 people in the tent. Carl took the lead and sat in the main seat at the innermost part of the tent, waving his hand and saying, "Eat whatever you like." Candace and Yvonne didn't stand on ceremony and each sat in their respective seats. Dory sat down in the last seat. No one spoke during the entire meal. Candace and Yvonne were nobles and obviously had a good upbringing. They used knives and forks to eat slowly and gracefully, looking very elegant. Although Carl was not a noble, he had also learned table manners and was very gentlemanly. Only Dory ate somewhat roughly. At first, he ate with relish, but later on, he became a little uncomfortable. The subtle contemptuous gazes from both sides made him a little impatient. In the past, whether he ate alone or in the blacksmith shop, everyone ate meat in large chunks and drank wine in large gulps. He had never experienced such a situation. However, his learning ability was also very fast. After just a few glances, he learned the correct way to use knives and forks, but he didn't eat very elegantly. Candace and Yvonne secretly despised him in their hearts, a crude savage. Carl didn't think so. He roughly knew Dory's former social status. Dory's learning ability was undoubtedly very strong. At least he knew things that he himself didn't know. There was no need to look down on him. Etiquette was something that could be learned, and learning ability was talent. He wasn't a noble, so he naturally knew how to recognize someone with learning ability. Yvonne and Candace had probably offended someone they shouldn't have. Soon, the meal was over. Yvonne and Candace left quickly, as if staying any longer would be a sin, and Dory also left quickly. Back in the tent, he continued to study the fireball spell. Yvonne returned to his room and touched his bandaged arm, his face expressionless. Unfortunately, this was the Northern Kingdom. If it were in the glorious empire, he would definitely make that kid suffer. Daring to let a dog bite me, this is unforgivable. However, that guy's medicine is not bad. When we get to the Eternal Forest, I'll find a way to keep him and imprison him, making him the family's apothecary. As a noble and a wizard, he hadn't suffered such a big loss in a long time. What was even more infuriating was that Lord Lion and Lord Kyle actually didn't let him speak and instead told him not to cause trouble. It's really hateful. But he's just a small wizard. If I can't deal with him head-on, can't I deal with you indirectly? But I have to be careful of this guy's poison. Mastering potionology is equivalent to mastering weapons of mass destruction. Generally, no one offends such people, but this story is too hateful. Candace returned to her room, her serious expression softened, and a slight smile appeared. I didn't expect to encounter a little guy who knows potionology on this trip. When I return to the glorious empire, I will definitely imprison him and make him the family's alchemist. I must be patient for now, but that Yvonne will definitely not let Dory go. I can use this to my advantage, making that guy close to me. It's a pity that I didn't build a good relationship with him from the beginning. It will be difficult to deal with him in the future. The newest chapter is available on Lu 9 Shu Ba. Candace also had her own ideas. As a noble, the idea of family-centric thinking was deeply ingrained and could not be changed. After truly seeing the fire elemental spirit, Dory dispelled the pseudo-spirit in his mind and rebuilt it. This time, he simulated the part below the waist in one go. Elemental spirits are pure energy bodies and do not need a physical body. Legs and arms are not necessary. Dory was also caught in a misunderstanding, thinking of building a pair of legs for the fire elemental spirit. Thinking of this, he felt a little embarrassed. However, visualizing the fire element was very difficult. Dory spent 240 copper coins, and could only visualize below the waist. Any more than that would require slow effort. But even so, he felt that his mental strength had greatly increased, which was a good thing. In the camp, he didn't dare to fully immerse himself in meditation. After exhausting all his mental strength, he focused on building the model of the fireball spell. The spell model of the fireball spell is a regular icosahedron. It looks very difficult, but if you observe it carefully, it's actually very simple. It's composed of 20 equilateral triangles. The bottom is a triangle, and then it expands upward, centered on the three sides. Several faces come together seamlessly and then continue to build upward. It looks simple, but it's very difficult to do. Dory spent a day and only completed half of it. Later, he changed his approach. He first created 3 nodes, then formed a face, and then built the other 19 faces, visualizing these 19 faces as exactly the same, and then bringing them together. The method seemed very clumsy, but it was very effective. Dory tried enthusiastically, and the day passed quickly. Before dawn, the torches around the houses had been lit, illuminating the entire camp. With a few roars, everyone in the tents woke up and began to pack up the camp. Today they were leaving Chris County and heading to the next city. They couldn't stay here any longer. Packing up as quickly as possible meant leaving as quickly as possible. After resting for 3 days, they had long been fed up with staying here. The whole camp became lively. Dory also got up quickly. He quickly packed his things and walked out of the tent. Chapter 120. The caravan was divided into 3 sections: management, the middle tier, and the lowest tier. Management included several large, medium, and small stewards in charge of the caravan, as well as several guard captains. The middle tier consisted of the guards, composed of various professions. The lowest tier consisted of the commoners currently packing up the tents. Some were caravan personnel, while others were ordinary people traveling with the caravan in exchange for protection. Large caravans required many people, and it was impossible for them all to be their own. Apart from the core personnel, they could hire other staff locally at any time, which was also a means for the caravan to conduct business. Dory saw that most of those dismantling tents and packing things were ordinary people. Some of the guards also participated, and they were very fast, sorting things into categories and packing them all onto separate large carriages. At this time, Dory saw how many people there were in the entire caravan, about 1,000. This flame caravan was a large caravan. The morning sky gradually brightened, and as the first ray of morning light shone on the earth, the entire camp had been emptied, revealing the messy grass underneath, and leaving a convoy stretching 1 kilometer long on the road beside it. Dory was standing with Carl at this moment. The 4 wizards were split into 2 carriages, one in front and one in back. Candace and Yvonne were nobles and didn't fit in with the 2 of them. The 2 of them shared a carriage and were responsible for the rear of the convoy. Dory and Carl sat in a carriage together, with the main management's carriage. After arranging everything, the convoy quickly set off. Sitting in the carriage, Dory felt a little melancholy. This was the first trip of his life, and he didn't know what lay ahead, full of unknowns. Sitting in the carriage's canopy was not as good as being outside, where he could at least see the scenery. He couldn't see anything, which made him very uncomfortable. Carl finished packing and looked at Dory, seeing him fidgeting. So he smiled and said, "The first time I came out, I was just like you, wanting to see the situation outside. Later, I stopped looking. We're fine in the front, but if we were in the back of the convoy, it would all be dust. If you want to see outside, you can lift the curtain." Dory looked at Carl, his expression slightly softening, and then lifted the car door and looked outside. At this time, the convoy had already started, slowly heading southeast along the official road. The convoy moved slowly, quickly leaving the city's surroundings and arriving outside the city. This was already the wilderness, with all kinds of large and small trees, weeds, and shrubs outside the official road. Besides that, in the distance, near the villages, you could also see fields of wheat and farmland. Dory had already seen these for 2 days and didn't find them very interesting. His heart, along with the movement of the carriage, had already gone to the distance. Carl looked at Dory, thinking of his own past, and smiled slightly. He said, "Back then, I was just like you, coming out of the academy with a surge of enthusiasm and embarking on the path of running a business. So many years have passed, and I've gotten used to this kind of life. He sighed, thinking of his time at the academy. Dory then heard a new term, academy. He turned his head and said, "Wizards also have academies." Carl nodded. "The Glory Empire has them, wizard academies of various factions. As long as you pay, you can get in. It's much stronger than the Northern Kingdom. The Northern Kingdom's national strength has always been poor because it resists the existence of wizards." Dory immediately became interested. "Then please tell me, what are they like?" Carl smiled, knowing that talking about these things would arouse Dory's interest. The highest magical organization in the Glory Empire is called the Glory Magic Academy, and there are branch academies everywhere below. This is the most orthodox academy, and of course, the most expensive. Besides the orthodox academies, there are also privately run schools, such as the Land of Molten Fire and the Realm of Earth, etc. According to different classifications, the prices vary. People who are slightly richer will send their children to the academies. The Glory Empire has a good atmosphere in this regard. The warrior profession is actually not bad either, anyway, it's much stronger than the Northern Kingdom. Dory's mind was filled with many images. The two walked and talked, which reduced Dory's emotions a lot. Soon, Carl asked, "How is your fireball spell construction going?" Dory thought for a while and said, "Almost done, I should be able to do it tonight after I try it." Carl nodded and said, "You need to hurry. After entering the wilderness, we are easily attacked." Dory's heart tightened, and he nodded heavily. As the scenery constantly receded, Chris County in the distance slowly moved away, and was finally completely blocked by the trees on the ground, and could no longer be seen. He had been looking out the window all the time. At first, he could feel the novelty, after all, it was the first time he had set out with the team, but in the end, he felt bored. Carl had already taken out a book to read at this time. Dory's appearance was very similar to his own in the past, and he just smiled slightly. The caravan had 3 meals a day, all of which were settled on the carriage. They distributed flatbread and jerky, and occasionally stopped to feed the horses and various pack animals, and give them water. Watching all this was very novel. Of course, Dory was not just staring outside all the time, he was also constructing spell models in his sea of consciousness. Switching from a 2-dimensional model to a 3-dimensional model at once takes a little time to adapt. The regular icosahedron is actually very easy to understand, but in the process of construction, there are always many problems. Often, if one point is slightly different from another, it will not be able to connect, and it is always a little bit off. This fully tests a person's imagination. Camping at night was on a very open flat ground. All the carriages formed a circle, with people in the middle, and then the cook began to cook, along with making dry food for the next day. Dory observed carefully, watching everything with a sense of novelty. At night, he had a small tent to himself, not the large kind, but a separate small tent. But he wasn't asleep yet, and Steward Lion came from afar. "Dory, do you have any ready-made warning magic arrays?" Dory nodded and said, "I have dozens of them, enough to set up some, but I only have 3 or 4 magic for feedback." Lion thought for a while and said, "That's enough. There's a small forest in the distance, and we need to guard against the beasts there." Dory was very happy and went back to the tent, took out the package, and pulled out many animal skins, as well as several animal skin bracers. These things that used to be difficult to make now seemed quite crude, and his mental power swept over them, and he himself disliked them. Looking at these animal skins, Lion's mouth twitched. It was the first time he had seen such crude alchemical products. Dory saw Lion's expression and blushed slightly. "These were made when I was a high-level alchemy apprentice. Without tools or materials, I'm already very satisfied to be able to do this." Lion looked at Dory, although his expression was somewhat teasing, he could imagine the difficulty of a wild wizard. He nodded and said, "If you have time at night, I can free up a quiet tent for you and provide materials to make better things. We will buy them at market prices, of course, not like these." Dory's eyes lit up. I am now a first-level extraordinary wizard, I should be able to make better ones."